I welcome my senior friends who are present here and who will be joining here today. Today, Ashwini ji will take up on a very important matter, that is Benami law, which all of us are very eagerly waiting to hear him. Without taking much more time, I now request Nitesh ji to say a few words. Nitesh ji. Nitesh ji is there?
I think he has been disconnected.
Okay,
yes,
no
sir,
issue.
So, we can go
so now I request Girdhari Sharma ji, our Secretary of News Exchange, to formally introduce Ashwin Taneja ji.
Sir, Ashwin Taneja ji is well known to all of us. He need no formal introduction, but still, as a customary, we are introducing him. He is a Master in Law LLM. He is the fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants, Institute of Company Secretaries, Institute of Cost Accountant, as well as Indian Council of Arbitration, New Delhi. He was practicing as a chartered accountant from 1995 to 2007. Thereafter, he changed the profession and started practicing as the lawyer with the firm RR Tax India, New Delhi, appearing before ITAT, High Court and Supreme Court. In 2015, he was elevated as a member of Income Tax Appellate Tribunal and was posted at Mumbai branch, where he delivered more than 2,000 important judgments covering varieties of issues. His landmark judgments are always quoted by us. In 2017, he resigned as a member of the tribunal and joined back his old practice legal profession. Currently, he is practicing as a lawyer with RRA Legal Delhi. He is specialized in the area of anti-money laundering law, Benami law, income tax, and he is representing various parties on the various subjects of the PMLA, ITAT, High Court, Supreme Court, etc. He is the profile speaker and presenter in the papers in all the various bodies. He is also a regular speaker in TV channels and newspapers. With these words, we introduce and welcome Sri Taneja ji. Over to Naveen, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Ashwini ji, now it's all up to you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me to share my thoughts and to be with all of you once again. It has always been my pleasure whenever I interact with my professional brothers and sisters at Kolkata, because for various reasons, I do not know, I have some special love and affection which I get from there, and also for the reason that I get keen participation from entire fraternity whenever I get the privilege to be with you and share my thoughts at Kolkata. So since 2017, when I resigned from tribunal and took up this profession again, and incidentally, I had a first brush with this new law, Benami law. And since then, on one point, I have been quite often emphasizing that, first of all, we have to decide that whether you can put the clock back, whether a transaction which is duly completed, executed, can you revive this transaction, that too in this manner, that too without specifically making the law as retrospective. Because if we read the notification which brought out this new legislation, it was specifically mentioned there that it is effective from 1/11/2016. Not only that, this one argument we have been taking in tribunal as well as in High Court and in authority, wherever we got the opportunity, that whenever notices under section 224 were received, the perusal of the notice, most of you must have also had some brush in, some kind of analysis or discussions where you were required to go through notices under section 24. All the notices, whether issued from Kolkata BPU or any other BPU in the country, they had one common defect and flaw, design flaw in all of them, that none of the notices ever gave any reasoning, any justification as to how the new law is being applied on the old transactions. Maybe decade old, maybe 3 decades old. So the notice would just state this is a transaction and you are the Benamidar and so is the beneficial owner and so property is Benami property or Benami transaction. And the law discussed therein would be 2 and 29A, 29B, 29C, 29D, etc., etc. Or taking benefit of section 6(1), etc. But none of the notices, none, I would say none would ever make a mention that how this new law is being applied. And all these arguments wherever raised, whether before the Housing Authority or before the IO or before the appellate tribunal, it remained uncontroverted. In none of the cases it ever came to the mind of the officer, A, that what is the counter contention of what we are saying, and B, at least in the forthcoming notices they could have improved upon it. And we have been arguing it before the courts also that, my lord, if you will not stop questioning this, it will entail wastage of the machinery of the government and productive time of many people, in addition to causing unnecessary harassment to the people. And they getting reversed at a later stage. So timely corrected, but nobody would listen. And that is what has exactly happened now. So Honorable Supreme Court in one stroke only finished all those cases where the retrospective operation was done. I hope all of you must have read. Even if you have not read, the gist is that, but Honorable Supreme Court has held that the law which was already there, 1988 law, that itself did not have the constitutional mandate. It did not meet the parameters of constitutionality. So therefore, what to say of the new law? When the old law itself did not exist constitutionally valid, so that cannot at all be inferred to have been retrospectively enforced now. So therefore, as a consequence of which, after making whatever analysis Honorable Supreme Court thought appropriate, held that, so all the proceedings with regard to confiscation brought out by the new legislation stand quashed. Now, many questions are arising here. The first question which is arising here is that what will happen to the proceedings? They will now stand quashed at their own, or something more is required to be done. Second question, what is the way forward? Third question, what is the impact on the other laws and economic offenses? Fourth question, what are the options available with the government and what can happen now? So we will briefly dwell upon these questions. I will not take much time because probably there is no point in going into the merits and various other discussions. So broadly, these 4 or 5 questions only I will answer, and then I will hand over the session back to the organizers with my gratitude for inviting me, because you can enjoy the other topics which are of more importance today. But whatever you will like to ask, that I would like to answer, because I don't know how much you would be interested in knowing on the merits and all that, or I would take up whatever time you would need on the impact on the other legislation or its interplay of the other remaining legislations, how they are going to impact now, what is the way forward, etc. So first question first, that how the proceedings will come to an end. So proceedings may be at the stage of IU, or at the stage of authority, or at the stage of tribunal, or at the stage of High Court, or at the stage of Supreme Court. Now at the stage of the initiating officer also, there could be 2 manners in which proceedings might be pending. For example, proceedings under section 19 or proceedings under section 24. So I will take up one by one. Suppose the proceedings are pending under section 19. Then the IO cannot proceed ahead if he is applying new law, because the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, has restrained. Though he can check out various facets with respect to continuation of any transaction, if even post 2016 any transaction is happening, but not beyond that. As far as proceedings under section 24 are concerned, so if there is no reasoning given and if there is no justification and only new law is applied on the old transaction, that has to be brought to an end. The mandate of the law is very clear, coming from Honorable Supreme Court. If the proceedings are pending in the urging authority, the urging authority also has to bring a quietus to the proceedings by way of rejecting the reference made out by the learned IO in view of the order coming from Honorable Supreme Court. But as of now, the urging authority is keeping the proceedings in abeyance. So a process has to be followed. And after that process, order will have to be duly passed by the authority. Only then proceedings will come to an end. It's not like that. It's like if there is suddenly red light happens, then everything will stop as it is. Because there is a process to bring a quietus to the proceeding with the help of legal process only.
मुझे बताओ कल भी work from home है?
Sorry, sir. Everyone is requested to keep themselves muted. Everyone, each and everyone, without any exception.
अच्छा, ठीक है.
So somebody was asking me that we need not do anything now because Supreme Court order has come and it has quashed the proceedings. Yes, Supreme Court has quashed first of all the proceedings which were pending in the petitions before the Honorable Supreme Court, and B, Honorable Supreme Court has declared the law. Has given a declaration as to whether the law can be applied retrospectively or not. Now it becomes law of the land. So the orders which have been passed, they are good. They may be good order or they may be bad order. An order is an order unless quashed. So a particular process is required. So academically speaking, legally speaking, now everything should stand quashed. But if the person affected by these orders really want to get relief, then he is supposed to follow that process. Otherwise, the things will remain in limbo. And that gentleman only will be in trouble. So therefore, why it will happen, I will explain with the help of an example. Suppose he would go to the initiating officer that, no, he will go first of all to the sub-registrar, okay, sir, now Supreme Court order has come. So therefore, now you transfer my property to Mr. X and forget about the attachment order which you received from the initiating officer, prohibiting you to transfer the subject property. The answer of the sub-registrar would be very simple. Sir, you may be right. Honorable Supreme Court has now given the order, which you have shown to me. But this order to me has been given by the initiating officer, and it is within his power to revoke it. So get that revocation order, and I will immediately enable you to transfer the property. I would allow the transfer. He will go back to the initiating officer. Initiating officer would simply say, look, sir, now these proceedings are not in my hand. You go to the urging authority. The urging authority, you approach, urging authority will say, no, now the things are in the hands of the tribunal. So then you have to go to the tribunal. So wherever the proceedings are pending, you have to approach that authority. That authority will, by creating a percolating down effect, will pass requisite orders after, of course, giving opportunity to the other party as the justice demands. It could be short date, it could be long date, it could be many things, depending upon many things in the platter. So, on the basis of that, the order will be passed. The order will come back to the lower authorities, and lower authorities, that is the lowest amongst them being IO. The IO will accordingly revoke his order by giving a direction to the sub-registrar. If they do not do it, then they will be liable for contempt. Not without doing it, they will be liable for contempt. Not before you approaching them, not without you approaching them and knocking at their doors. No, then not. But if you approach them, they do reverse of it or they do not listen to you, then you can make them liable for contempt. So this is one part. That process, there could be other permutation combinations, which we can take up on case-to-case basis. So process has to be completed. Every action, every file, it is born with the help of a legal process, and it will be quashed, it will be closed with the help of a defined legal process only. Next question was, what is the way forward? Now, way forward is that though this law retrospective application has not been allowed, but prospective has not been denied. So though law has not gone, it has not vanished. Law is there, staring at on our heads. So whatever deliberations I had made in past couple of days, some part of it will hold valid. Particularly that part where I said Samay Anant hai, na iska prarambh hai na ant hai, connecting with the Srota given by Shri Krishna. So if transaction is done today, no future time limit has been prescribed for that. Meaning thereby the sword of litigation will keep hanging unless even the present law is also held to be constitutionally invalid, which in course of time we will knock at the doors of Honorable Supreme Court and get it held so, if requisite amendments are not made. Because the law was hurriedly made, it requires a revamp, and unless that revamp is done, I do not think many of the provisions are going to be upheld constitutionally valid. So way forward, I will include in three parts. A, kindly follow the process to bring quietus to the proceedings. B, kindly remain aware that law has not gone anywhere, law is there. C, it can still impact various transactions which are going to take place. It can have impact on the other laws, other transactions, and as I covered in the laws dealing with in my deliberations or interplay of these laws with each other. So while carrying out a transaction, if it is Benami in nature, it will be Benami for some reasons which are mentioned in section 53. So if it is for some reason mentioned in section 53, it can still be covered in the category of scheduled offenses, if that thing also parts in scheduled offenses, or tax evasion, or any other statutory violation, or maybe violation under Black Money Act, etc., or FEMA, etc. So this law was only confining to the transaction being done in disguised manner. It is not legalizing the illegal or illegitimate transactions. No, that we have to separately take care of. So therefore, we can now restructure our talk on interplay, and whenever all of you would decide that we have to cover that topic, we can again gather and do that. But first of all, let us actually close one chapter and then begin the fresh chapters as they are forthcoming. Now, the last question is that what are the options available before the Honorable Government? Because it is not going to let the BPUs, 26 BPUs as non-functional. Because the reason for which Benami law was brought out are undoubtedly biased. That has been acknowledged by the Honorable Supreme Court also. Only the way it was structured, the way it was implemented, brought out some iniquities, some unfairness, some hurried drafting, some irrational provisions in between, which mixed up rights and wrongs and caused disproportionate damage. Otherwise, law is required. And probably India is the country who is leading from the front in combating Benami transactions. Because any financial crimes, or rather any crime, the backbone is Benami. Things are done in disguised manner. And many governments are jostling with it. They could not get the idea of bringing out Benami law, which our government has taken it, taken the lead. So therefore, I think the administration, the government will explore all possible options to reinforce the law in structured manner. It can file review so that the things can be brought to standstill as of now. It can reintroduce the law in a manner. For example, one of the options available is to make it as continuing offense. as amendment was brought out in PMLA in the year 2013. Because if you remember, late Shri Arun Jaitley had also stated that how can we prohibit people now to not to do Benami transaction? I mean, prohibit them from doing Benami transaction and simultaneously allow continuation of holding of Benami property to the people who have already done Benami transactions. And absolutely, he was justified. Then some kind of actions are required to be taken so that if Benami properties are not, Benami transactions are not allowed, then not allowed. Prohibit everybody and anybody and everybody whosoever has already done Benami transactions. The only thing is whether they can be punished from a retrospective date. That is a question which has been constitutionally raised by the Honorable Supreme Court and said no. But they can be allowed to be continued. Their Supreme Court is not stopping. So we have to be aware of that. So a person may not suffer with the criminal consequences, but that person cannot be allowed to continue to do the wrong. So we have to be aware of that. So that's all with regard to the Benami, which I wanted to share with you. Now, you might be having many questions, few doubts, and I think our esteemed organizers may please make it open house session now, so that if I can address to some of the queries, I would, and then otherwise I will close my session and then you can get on to the other session and we'll meet again with a restructured topic, whichever will be of any use to you. Yes, sir.
If anyone has any question, they can either type it in the chat box or one by one they can raise their hand and unmute themselves and ask the question. If anyone has any question.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes. Ajay Motaji, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, Sanjay, good afternoon. I want to know one small question.
Good afternoon, Motaji.
Good afternoon. If the proceedings are before the adjudicating authority, and it relates to purchase of a property way back in 2011-12, and the property still continues to be held by the so-called owner, whom the department terms as Benamidar.
Yes.
So here also the department can move the old Benami Act without taking criminal consequences from therein.
Can you show me section 24 notice which was issued by them?
Sorry, right now I'm not holding on to it. But as you said, the notice did not contain the reasons for
yes.
all this.
Yes, that is where they have faulted, and that is where I have been since last 4 years. I have been saying that your 24 notice is all. I mean, it is flawed. There is a design flaw. It does not empower you to assume jurisdiction under new law. So present notice is being flawed. They will have to drop it.
Okay, fine. So the notice has
that
to
is what my understanding is.
So can they still issue fresh notice under the old law?
They can. They will.
They can.
I do not know what they are going to do. I'm exploring the options before them. And whether within the framework of this law, they can do it. I have serious doubts. Again, this law has design flaw. So whatever wrongs were there, they did not focus on that. Whosoever was not liable to be now punished, they have focused upon that. So it is their own confusion which has led to the questioning of all the proceedings by Honorable Supreme Court.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sir.
If anyone has any doubt. Actually, sir, most of the CAs are not into this thing. So I think so the questions are very less, but the participation is good.
In fact, it stands all the answers are already, questions are already by Honorable Supreme Court has already answered all the questions. So the
Supreme Court has made it that it cannot be retrospective. So there is a chance in amendment in the Act now.
I don't think amendment would be a good idea. They will have to bring on record some new provisions. Because why I am saying this? In one case, I read one order passed by the learned session judge here in Delhi, whereby learned judge has held, because it was a matter of prosecution, So prosecution notice was challenged, and there the complaint was filed, and there while disposing that challenge, the preliminary objection, honorable judge has held that I treated as a continuing offense. So though you have committed the offense prior to 2016, but since you are holding the property, therefore I will treat it is a case of continuing offense. So therefore, in the present legislation, you are liable to be prosecuted under Section 53 of the PBPT Act. That is how she disposed of. I do not know to what extent it will sustain, but my thinking is that maybe some thinking may be going on these lines.
Okay.
Make it somehow legally valid or something like that.
They may treat it as a continuing offense.
Yes.
So if the amendment is made accordingly, then the people will be again held responsible for all these problems.
Something like that. To what extent
Something like that may come.
valid, not valid. I mean, some of the options which I said that 3-4 options are there. One is to file review, get stay. Second is coming out with the new provisions like this, etc., etc. Or scrapping this law and bringing out new law, and then with these change parameters. So there are few, I mean, options going on, and because many people, as it has come to the notice of the government, that many people have really done transactions which were highly illegal, which were highly in disguised manner, particularly few politicians, particularly many bureaucrats. Because for business class people, there are already many provisions to take care of the illegalities done by them, any tax evasions done by them. But as far as this is concerned, I mean, this is a situation which they might be facing. So, I mean, for them, I don't think government is going to give clean check to those people, I mean, particularly government officials or particularly politicians and all that.
Yes.
That is what has fallen into my ears from some sources. I do not know to what extent it may be true, it may be false. Let us see. It is everybody's guess, like my guess.
Thank you, sir. Now I will request Sarojji to propose vote of thanks.
Sarojji, just a second. There's a question from Manisha Agarwal. If the company has taken the benefit of voluntary disclosure of income scheme for share capital, then will it be under Benami Act?
Look, in fact, you have asked two questions. First of all, whether the issue of share capital itself can be roped into Benami. That itself we have been debating number of times. So that debate continues. Right? Apart from whatever Honorable Supreme Court has held, that debate also continues. Because I have some different views, and learned IOs of the country have been taking different views in their notices. Then the second question, second aspect to it is, if yes, then how it will make a change if a voluntary disclosure has been. So by making a voluntary disclosure, to some extent, some admissions have been made. But admissions was with regard to the payment of taxes, not with regard to the falsehood of the transaction. So that option always remains with you to challenge that that voluntary disclosure scheme had only a limited purpose. It was not like that. It was for the limited purpose of offering of tax. We are not admitting anything. So but in such circumstances, the burden will be upon you. Now, if you fail to discharge that burden, to what extent the transition of share capital can be covered in Benami? That we have already discussed number of times. That at the most only the share certificates can be treated as Benami, nothing else. Whereas the IOs have been wrongly treating everything involved as Benami, the property, the bank balance, etc., which is not the correct position of law. On the top of it, now first of all, the hurdle will be that how to overcome the Supreme Court judgment. And so long as the Supreme Court judgment is there, all transaction cannot be roped in, except this continuing offense thing, which let us see how the things go about it. Yes,
so much, sir.
You are willing to ask something, Bhutaria ji? Good evening.
Namaste, Taneja ji.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaste.
Sir, are you staying there till the end, sir? Ashwani, sir? Or will you take leave?
I will take leave if you will kindly permit me.
Okay. Sarojji, can you please go ahead with the vote of thanks?
Sir, I would like to thank you on behalf of Use Exchange Study Circle, as well as all my fellow colleagues. It was a wonderful session, no doubt. The key takeaway will be very helpful for all of us, though we are not expert with Benami law and don't deal in a regular manner, but no doubt your value additions points are taken by us. I once again thank you very much for coming out of your busy schedule and deliberating on this subject matter, which will be very helpful for each and all of us. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us. Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Saroj ji.
Looking forward.
Though you have already delivered vote of thanks, पर एक चीज
Okay,
मैं
sir.
आज ऐड करना भूल गया, and if you permit me, I will add to that. Benami law आया.
Yes, sure, sir. Sure. Anything is for our benefit, sir.
बेनामी लॉ आया, बेनामी लॉ चला गया फिलहाल, अभी मतलब इसका जो बाकी इफेक्ट है वो हम देख रहे हैं, पर इसने लाइफ की बहुत सारी चीजें सिखाई मुझे. मैंने तो बहुत कुछ सीखा इससे. मुझे तो लाइफ की गाइडेंस इस बेनामी लॉ ने सिखाई है. जिंदगी कैसे जीनी चाहिए या
कैसे
क्या
जीना चाहिए,
नहीं करना चाहिए, दोनों चीजें मैंने सीखी हैं. देखिए, इसको जब जब पढ़ते हैं तो मुझे श्री कृष्ण की कई सारी बातें याद आती हैं इस बेनामी लॉ जब मैं पढ़ता हूँ.
क्या लाए थे, क्या लेके जाओगे.
नॉट ओनली दैट, हम लोग जो जिंदगी जीते ना वो असली जिंदगी नहीं जीते. बात सिर्फ प्रॉपर्टी की नहीं है, बात सिर्फ जिंदगी की है. तो मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है आज मुझसे भी और आप सबसे कि क्या हम जिंदगी बेनामी तो नहीं जी रहे अपनी, उसको तो रियल जी रहे हैं ना.
ठीक बोले
तो
सर,
जरा
बहुत बड़ी बात बोल दिया,
बहुत
बहुत
बड़ी
बड़ी बात
सोच है।
बोले.
उसको इंट्रोस्पेक्ट कर लेते हैं,
हम्म
क्योंकि वो क्वेश करने वाला नहीं है. अगर तुमने बेनामी जिंदगी जी तो वो कहेगा नहीं भैया ये तो तुम्हारे जन्म से ही मैंने कह दिया था रियल जिंदगी जीना. मैं जो जिंदगी दे रहा हूं वही जीना, किसी और की मत जीना और किसी और के लिए मत जीना. तुम्हारे को भेज रहा हूं, तुम जी के आओ अच्छे से. तो हम अंदर से क्या सोचते हैं वही बाहर से हम दिखने चाहिए. हम किस चीज को अपना समझते हैं, जो हमारी है उसी को समझते हैं, किसी और को समझते हैं, या जो हमारी नहीं है दूसरों को बताते हैं वो हमारी है, जो हमारी है उसको बताते हैं नहीं है. तो हम क्या जैसे अंदर से हैं वैसे बाहर हैं और जैसे बाहर है वैसे ही अंदर हैं. ये कई सारे प्रश्न खड़े करती हैं. क्या हम सोचते हैं और क्या हम करते हैं उसमें डिस्कनेक्ट तो नहीं है. सो एक चीज तो मैंने निर्धारित की इस लॉ को पढ़ने के बाद, गेट रीड ऑफ बेनामी लाइफ एंड लिव रियल लाइफ
जी.
एंड देन एंजॉय द ब्लिस. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Rightly said, sir. Thank you so
थैंक
much,
यू
sir.
सर, बहुत बढ़िया सर,
Thank you, sir.
बहुत अच्छा बात बोला सर,
थैंक यू वेरी
बहुत ही अच्छा बात बोला.
थैंक यू सर.
बहुत बढ़िया बोले.
थैंक यू सर.
मोहित सर को
Now, I request Girdhari ji to introduce our next speaker, Sri Mohit Bhuturia ji.
Mohit Bhutoria ji, our past president, he is the most valuable member of and pillar of views exchange. He is expert in NBFC. जब भी हम लोग NBFC में पूछना हो, कंपनी लॉ में पूछना, तो only one man who comes in our mind is Mohit Bhutoria ji. He is managing partner in SC Bhutoria and Company Chartered Accountants. He stood first in the CA Eastern Region in the final exams. He is co-opted member of the institute and various study circles. He is also enrolled as a quality reviewer, peer reviewer with the FIRB ICA. He has made presentation almost on regular basis on Companies Act, accounting standards, NBFC, LLP, and all related laws. His contribution to the views cannot be measured in any terms. With these words, we welcome our own past president, Mohit Bhutoria ji. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the kind words, Saroj Girdhari ji. Thank you, Saroj ji, for inviting me. Very good evening to all of you, friends. The topic for discussion today is Schedule 3 of the Companies Act 2013 and Caro 2020. So, what we will do, as has been told by the convener and the deputy convener, we will discuss the final points of the amendments. We will discuss the amended version of Caro 2020. If you have any questions, you can put in the chat box, or with the permission of the convener, you can raise your hand and I'll be happy to answer all the queries. So, Saroj ji and Girdhari ji, I think we should make the session as interactive as possible, because it's now almost 5 months from the close of the financial year, and I think all of us have already prepared and finished drafting of many financials and reports. So there may be some questions or some confusions to us. I think we'll try to address the confusions as much as possible. So I think this
जहाँ
is
पे हम लोग मिस्टेक कर सकते हैं वो थोड़ा सा आप कवर कर लीजिए मोहित जी, वो
correct,
ज्यादा
correct.
इम्पोर्टेंट है.
Definitely. Sure.
हाँ. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So schedule 3 introduction I need not give. We straight away go to the finer points. Now this is very important. Compulsory rounding off based on total income or turnover. Earlier it was optional. It was only optional for companies which were not following Ind AS. For companies which were following Ind AS, this was mandatory since 2017 when the first Ind AS financial statements were prepared. But what is very important now is, like, if we prepare balance sheets based on rounding off and not in rupees, then there will be problem while preparing our financials, while preparing our ROC returns in AOC 4 and AOC 4 CFS. Therefore, till the ministry comes out with the amended version of forms which says that you can prepare AOC 4 and AOC 4 CFS based on the same rounding principles as you have done for the financial statements, then we can do away with preparing in rupees. But till then, we have to prepare the financial statements in rupees as well. Again, income tax also, the returns, if you see, they say that the return information which is required to be disclosed in the tax returns are in rupees. Therefore, for all practical purposes, while you prepare the financial statements in lakhs, thousands or crores, please prepare financial statements in rupees as well. This applies even to the notes forming part of financial statements, whether they are related party transactions, whether they are a disclosure relating to segments, all are required, all should be prepared both in rupees as well as in the rounding of whatever whatever denomination one has chosen. Now these are some cosmetic changes. We used the word property, plant and equipment and tangible assets. Now they say property, plant and equipment and intangible assets. It is just a cosmetic change. One more cosmetic change. Earlier in profit and loss, we used to say revenue from operations, total other income, total revenue. Now they say that instead of total revenue, you state total income. So this is one more cosmetic change. Why they have stated so? Because if you see, when we say total revenue, revenue word is defined in AS9. Gross is the amount gross amount on realization on account of sale of goods, services. So revenue has something to do with the principal operating activities of the enterprise. So therefore, when we say total revenue, when we say total revenue, and within total revenue, if other income is included, it there is some sense of contradiction of AS9. So therefore, they have used the term total income instead of total revenue. Now, this is very important, and often questions are asked by our professional colleagues about disclosures relating to share capital of promoters and changes during the year. So what is promoter? Again, promoter is defined as a person in Companies Act under 2 clause 69 as a person who is named as such in the prospectus when it comes to listed companies, or is identified by the company in the annual return referred to in section 92. While we prepare annual return, again we give the holding of promoter holding and non-promoter holding in the annual return. So this is one place where you also yourself state that who are the promoters of the company. Another criteria is who has the control over the affairs directly or indirectly, where as a shareholder or director or otherwise. And third, in accordance with whose advice, directions or instructions the board of directors of the company is accustomed to act. Now there are three limbs of this definition. Now if any of your shareholder falls within this limb, then this is a promoter. Often questions are asked that, look, I am a private company, a section of shares are held by my family members. There are certain shares which are held not by family members, by third parties or maybe private limited companies. These persons do not fall in clause B and clause C. That is, they neither control the affairs of the company directly or indirectly, whether as shareholder or director. And neither these are persons in whose accordance with whose advice, directions or instructions the board of companies is accustomed to act. Therefore, whether it should be promoter or not. Now again, it depends upon the intention of the parties. Therefore, there may be some corporate bodies who happen to be outside the core group of the family, but they may be treated as a promoter, provided you have an understanding to this effect with them in terms of any agreement entered as shareholder between the parties or in terms of your articles of association. If not, then they need not be shown as in the category of promoters. So identification of promoters lies with the management. Auditor has to see that if any of the persons falls under the clause B and clause C, that is control or advice. If they fall under these two categories, then it is the duty of the auditors also to point out to them that, look, this is a gentleman who holds more than 50% shares in your company. Therefore, by virtue of definition of control, he's deemed to having control over the company. And therefore, if that person is not shown as promoter, then it would not be correct to that extent. Now, the guidance note of ICI has said that in case, although Schedule 3 requires only disclosure relating to promoters as at the year end, they say that please give the details of promoters and changes for the current year as well as for the previous year, so that one can understand what is the change and what is the implication of the change. Now, tomorrow, say in year 1, you have shown certain private corporate bodies as promoters, but in year 2, you do not want to show them as promoters for some reason or the other, because you say that they neither have the control over the affairs nor in accordance with whose advice, directions or instructions the board is accustomed to act. Then the company will be within its power. It will be within the power of the board to change the classification of shareholding of promoters. So this I am talking in respect of private companies and unlisted public companies. For listed companies, we have SEBI guidelines and we have to follow the SEBI guidelines. Now, coming to trade payables. So what are trade payables? Section AS 29 defines what are trade payables. These are liability for purchase of goods or services that have been received or supplied by the company in the ordinary course of its business. Now, this time Schedule 3 has asked for an age analysis of the trade payables. And again, for age analysis, for each of the age analysis classification, they even have asked for, please provide details of dues to MSME. Please provide details of disputed dues to MSME, undisputed dues to MSME. The question arises, what will be the significance of classification or age analysis of trade payables? Number one, what is the significance of showing trade payables in the two subcategories, MSME and others? And again, within MSME, what are their disputed dues? So this has significance not only from the perspective of tax law, but also from the perspective of IBC law, which we will discuss in the next slide. But often a question arises as to how do you distinguish between trade payables and other current liabilities? So what are trade payables? Are purchase of goods trade payables? Yes. Are purchase of service trade payables? Yes. Are payment to auditors trade payables? Yes. Are payment for purchase of capital assets trade payables? No. These are not trade payables. There is a fine line of difference between trade payables and sundry creditors. So whatever are liabilities for goods or services in the ordinary course of business, these are trade payables. But contractual obligations, such as purchase of capital assets, such as payment dues to employees, such as dues to provident fund, ESI, these are not trade payables, but these are other current liabilities. Similarly, if we say purchase stationery, payment liability for purchase of stationery are trade payables, because again these are services obtained in the ordinary course of goods or services obtained in the ordinary course of business. Now, so we'll discuss two issues. One is what is the significance of showing in this table MSME and non-MSME dues? What is the significance of giving age analysis of trade payables? Now, here, what is important is the reference to the insolvency and bankruptcy code. Again, dispute is also defined there as to what constitutes a dispute. Again, what happens, in case one of your clients has obtained goods or services from a party, and say the amount is in excess of 1 crore, because now the limit for going to filing an application under section 9 with IBC is 1 crore, and say you have purchased goods worth 2 crores. The goods have been consumed by you in the usual course of your production. There does not exist any dispute. This amount is shown as an undisputed due in your financial statements, and therefore say you happen to be an MSME as well. So what happens? besides your remedies available under the MSME Act for going to the MSME Facilitation Council for recovery of interest, you can also go to NCLT. The other party can also go to NCLT for recovery of disputes. In the recovery of the dues, while it files an application under Section 9 to IBC, there does not exist any dispute. Even your balance sheet shows the dues as undisputed dues. So since there does not exist any dispute, and if the claim is found to be valid, NCLT may admit the claim. But in the alternate, if say the goods were not according to the specifications received by you, you have raised in dispute with the supplier that look, the goods supplied by you are of say class B, but I wanted goods of class A. Therefore, you please take back the goods. So irrespective whether the supplier takes back the goods, and you do not account for the purchases also in your books. Therefore, these are what you call disputed dues. Or alternate, let me again say that, say you have purchased some machinery, while the machinery was required to be as per some specification or meet some capability relating to production, but it is not being able to produce goods of that quality. So you have withheld the amount for liability for purchase of machinery, and you have raised a dispute to the other party that look, as per the contract, as per the terms, this machine was required to meet some specifications, some capability relating to production, but it is unable to meet that, and therefore I am withholding your payment. So this is a case of a dispute, and this dispute is proved by some corroborative or evidence to the auditor also to enable it classify these dues as a disputed dues. Therefore, such cases perhaps NCLT may also take cognizance of the dispute and may not admit the claim of the supply of your supplier in IBC proceedings. So the concept of dispute is very important, and I think we should advise our clients that look, having regard to the fact that NCLT mechanism is a very fast track mechanism, and whether it is a financial creditor or whether it is an operational creditor, the application, subject to any dispute or litigation, generally gets admitted within 6 months to 1 year. Therefore, in the event you happen to have some dispute, please officially raise dispute by way of emails, by way of letters, and all those correspondences should be kept in the file, so that if appropriate stage the supplier goes to NCLT, then you have something to corroborate or dispute the application. This again has a lot of implication under taxation laws. We have come across a large number of cases where, say, you have trade creditors, say liability for purchases, liability for expenses, and these purchases and expenses has been claimed by you in income tax as deduction in earlier years, and say they are barred by limitation more than 3 years, and there is no acknowledgement of any liability given by you to the so-called trade creditors, or irrespective whether an acknowledgement of liability has been given by you or not, but these pertain to payables which are more than 3 years. Then in some of the cases which I have mentioned here, in all the cases which I have mentioned here, the department took a plea that look, these are barred by limitation, lying for more than 3 years, 4 years. In majority of the cases, these creditors are not traceable. Therefore, under Section 41, all these liabilities should be added back to the total income of the SEC. Although in none of the cases department met with success, but yet this can be a point of dispute being raised by the income tax department. Therefore, again, it is advised that in case these trade payables are more than 3 years, try and obtain confirmation of them from them. Ensure that these trade payables are actually payable, and if it is barred by limitation by virtue of Limitation Act, and also for the reason that there is no acknowledgement of any liability made by our client, then possibly subject to other factors, one can also advise the client to go for write back of the liabilities. Now, certain changes in disclosures are required. In case of PP, they say that disclosures about change due to revaluation, if 10% or more in aggregate for the net carrying of each class. Therefore, if I say that land is a class I may have 10 lands, 1 crore each. So total cost is 10 crores. I have revalued the land, and when I have to do revaluation, it cannot be a selective revaluation. In the sense, if I have to revalue land, I have to revalue all lands. But it is always possible that certain lands, when revalued, the cost may remain same, or there may be a downward revaluation, and in some cases, there may be an upward revaluation. But if the aggregate net amount of revaluation less devaluation exceeds 10%, from 10 crores, even if it exceeds 10, if it goes to 10 crore 50 lakhs, that the revaluation component is 50 lakhs, which is less than 5%, less than 10% of the cost, then disclosure is not required. But if the revaluation goes from 10 crores to 15 crores, the 5 crores is the net amount of revaluation, net of devaluation. So it is 50% of the original cost. Then disclosure relating to this is required to be made. One cosmetic change or marshalling change in case of short-term borrowings is there. Presently, what we used to do, that in case we have, say, a loan of, say, 10 crores taken from ICICI Bank, interest is due on 31st December and 30th June every year. And out of this, say, 10 crores, say, it is repayable in 1 crore equal installment over a period of 10 years. So 1 crore each is required to be paid year after year. So what we used to do, out of this 10 crores of long-term borrowings which are outstanding as at 31st March, 9 crore was shown under long-term borrowings, 1 crore was shown under the head current liabilities, other current liabilities, current maturities of long-term borrowings, and interest for the period from 1st January till 31st March, which was accrued but not due, it was shown again under the head other current liabilities. But now what they say, that rest disclosure of 9 crores and interest accrued and not due is perfect. What you are doing, continue with that. But as far as 1 crore is concerned, this amount of 1 crore which we are showing under the head current maturities of long-term borrowings under the head other current liabilities, now show it under the head short-term borrowings as a separate line item. Therefore, first you have short-term borrowings and disclosure relating to short-term borrowings. Then we have current maturities of long-term borrowings. A pertinent question again arises here, that when we show these current maturities of long-term borrowings and assuming they are secured, whether the nature of security is also required to be specified here. Schedule 3 does not say so. It is sufficient if you specify the nature of security under the item long-term borrowings. I think that would be sufficient. Again, there is one change in disclosure. Security deposits we used to show under the head long-term loans and advances. Now what they have said, that this security deposit should be shown under the head other non-current assets. Again, there is one change. This security deposit may be a security deposit for performance of some obligation. We often give security deposit to, say, GST, sales tax authorities, security deposit, say we give security deposit to electricity companies, CSC, West Bengal electricity boards. A question arises, if we gave some trade deposits to the supplier, whether these are security deposits. First, we have to find out whether these trade deposits are deposits which are adjustable against supplies made, or these are in the nature of a deposit for security for performance of some obligation. So if trade deposits are usual deposits which are adjustable against supplies, then these are not security deposits, and therefore they should not be shown under the other non-current assets, and you should show them depending upon the nature of your contract as short-term advances or long-term advances, as the case may be. Another disclosure which is required is with respect to borrowings from banks and financial institutions not used for the purpose for which it was taken. This is again a fallout of Caro. In Caro, the auditor is required to report whether the term loans raised by the company has been utilized for the purposes for which it has been raised. If not, auditor has to give disclosure. So the role of auditor is is only limited to term loans, but management is required to report on any borrowing from banks and financial institutions which has not been used for the purpose for which it was taken. Therefore, if I have a cash credit account and I have utilized the cash credit for acquisition of capital assets, then perhaps it may be a case of borrowing not used for the purpose. But if it is one comprehensive cash credit account in which all purchases, amount relating to purchase, sales, profit, loss, everything is being poured in there, then again you have to try and analyze and find out whether there is any element of utilization of this cash credit account for purchase of fixed assets. To illustrate, give you a simple case. Say in year one, I obtained a cash credit of 10 crores. Now this cash out of this 10 crores, this should be represented in form of some net working capital. But instead of my net working capital being 10 crores, that is current assets minus current liabilities other than bank borrowings. Therefore, I have inventories of say 12 crores. I have trade payables of say 7 crores. So net amount now is 5 crores. And rest, the question arises, where has the balance amount gone? So therefore, it may be a situation where I have utilized the balance for purchase of capital assets. So on a overall evaluation of balance sheet, we have to find out also in case of cash credit account, whether they have been used for the purposes for which they have been obtained. In case of term loans and intercorporate deposits, we can find out with respect to one-to-one correlation. Term loans cannot be utilized. If it is for purchase of machinery, that cannot be used for any working capital purposes and vice versa. Again, in case of trade receivables, they have sought age analysis. This is very important for the investors and bankers as well. We all know bankers give DP, what you call, they calculate the drawing power based on whether these debts are less than 90 days or less than 180 days or whatever stipulation. Generally, it is less than 90 days. Now, investors also are able to find out what is the overall debtors turnover ratio of the company based on this table. And therefore, if I have huge debts stuck for more than 1 or 2 years, then this may give a negative impression to the investor that this is a company where money is not being churned. They are not able to properly realize the receivables, or it may pose certain other implications to the investors that whether these are genuine transactions or not. Again, their Schedule 3 requires you to give disclosures of what are disputed trade receivables, what are undisputed trade receivables, what trade receivables are considered good, what trade receivables are considered doubtful. Now, our understanding is that when you give this table, not only you have to give this table for the current year, but you have to give this table for the previous year as well. So this age analysis as on 31st March 22 and as on 31st March 21, both are required to be given. And this applies even to the trade payables table, and this will apply even to the other disclosures which are sought to be given by virtue of amendment to Schedule 3. This is based on the understanding that Schedule 3 requires that when you give the current year figures, you are also required to give figures for the previous year. Now, we have all seen that in recent past, there have been a spate of notices issued by the Registrar of Companies under Section 206, and many of the observations in observations in their report, in their final report or order under Section 206 subsection 4 pertains to many of these disclosures that you have classified trade receivables, but you have not stated whether how much is considered good, how much is considered doubtful, or in case where all are considered good, you have not stated the words sundry trade receivables, debts outstanding for unsecured considered good. So absence of the word unsecured considered good is also a violation of Schedule 3. Therefore, while preparing financial statements, one should be very careful that you strictly conform to the disclosure requirements which is specified in Schedule 3. Now, Schedule 3 requires a disclosure of details of title deeds of the property not held in the name of the company in the format So I think we have seen the format, each one of us. And again, there is a similar clause in Caro, which requires the auditors to report in respect of title deeds not held in the name of the company. A few question arises that whether in respect of title deed not held in the name of the company, they ask what is the relevant line item of the balance sheet, because immovable property may be under the head property, plant and equipment, it may be under the head investment property, it may be under the head assets held for sale, it may be under the head stock in trade. So you can have immovable property in each of the four classifications. Therefore, the question arises, so my reporting is confined to which property is not held in the name of the company. They say that only property, plant and equipment and investment property. And this is not confined to stock in trade or assets held for sale. Now, they also ask if the title deed is not held in the name of the company, why it is not held in the name of the company, since when it is not held in the name of the company, in whose name the title deed is held, and whether the person in whose name title deed is held is promoter, director, relative of promoter, director, or employee of promoter, director. So they have asked for the categories, whether it fits into the categories. If not, we can write no, but title deeds are held in whose name this is required to be stated. Now, a few questions arise in the sense that if the company name of the company has changed, so the company's name was, say, earlier Sun Pharma Limited, now the name of the company has changed to, say, Some Pharmaceutical Formulations Limited, would it be a case of title deed not held in the name of the company? In my name, in our opinion, no, because it is in the name of a company, in the old name of the company, and may not be in the new name of the company, but still it is in the name of the company. In case of amalgamation merger, where, say, the property was held by the transferor company, say X, and this X amalgamated to Y, the property continues to held in the name of the X as in the books of Y. So it is a case where property is not held in the name of the company. It is held in the name of the transferor company. After amalgamation, the company is required to pay stamp duty, get its property mutated. Stamp duty on the court order, not on the property. Stamp duty on the court order. In West Bengal, we have a stamp duty law. In Bombay, we have a stamp duty law on amalgamation. So pay stamp duty on the deed of on the NCLT order sanctioning the amalgamation, and go for mutation, and then get the title deed in the name of the company in the municipal records, state records. So what is immovable property? What is title deed? This does not require any discussion. Now, disclosure of revaluation. If revaluation is done based on the valuation of a registered valuer, this fact should be stated. If not on the basis of a report of a registered valuer, that should be stated that this gentleman who did the valuation is not a registered valuer. It is not compulsory in case you opt for revaluation that it should be done by a registered valuer. It is not compulsory. Now, this is very, very important, and please give some time, because this has a lot of relevance, and specifically for NBFCs, non-NBFCs, close private limited companies. These are very, very important, because whatever disclosures Schedule 3 has asked the management to give, again, there are a number of questions in the Caro report which we will discuss, and there are a lot of significance. Often we find that there are transactions of loans, but there are no documents. Auditor does not know that if a loan is granted and if there is no document, how can you say whether it is repayable on demand? How can you say whether it is repayable after 6 months or after 1 year? How can you say if the interest is payable annually or quarterly or monthly? So what is very important is that there must be, in respect of all loans, whether they are loans from directors, relative of directors, or group companies, there must be some document evidencing the loan transaction, and that document must spell out what is the rate of interest, what is the other terms and conditions, what are the repayment obligation terms and conditions, nature of security, if any, all those are required to be stated. This is very, very important. Unless it is there, whatever table we will prepare, that table will be a complete incorrect table. And while we are going to report on Caro, that will be a complete incorrect reporting. Let me tell you, in case of NBFCs, you are mandatorily, by virtue of provisions contained in the NBFC's Prudential Norms Directions, the Fair Practices Code, you are mandatorily required to give a copy of the loan agreement or any document evidencing the terms and conditions of the loan to the borrower. There have been cases in NCLT where people have gone to for NBFCs have gone as financial creditors for resolution, IBC resolution, and their cases have been rejected by NCLT for the reason that they have been able to produce only the confirmations. And when was asked that please provide copy of the loan agreement, which you are mandatorily required to give to all the borrowers, you are mandatorily required to keep yourself, because that will contain the principal terms and conditions of the loan. Since that was not there, it was held that the Fair Practices Code or RBI guidelines have not been complied with, and therefore their applications were rejected. In course of inspection, if RBI comes across that you have not given the loan agreement, it constitutes a serious violation of the Fair Practices Code and may have implications for you as an NBFC or continuing of the certificate of registration as an NBFC. Unless we have all these details, we will not able to specify the will not able to provide details which is sought by Schedule 3 in the table. So what they have sought: loans and advances in the nature of loans granted to promoters. Again, promoters are defined as per Companies Act. Directors, KMP again are defined as per Companies Act. Related party as defined under Companies Act, either severally or jointly with any person, that are repayable on demand or without specifying any terms or period of repayment. Therefore, even if it is repayable on demand, you should have a specific document. If it does not have any terms of repayment or period of repayment, therefore just understand, if you have given loan to some party, third party, not connected to you and on good faith basis, and there is no specific terms or period of repayment, and say the quantum is 2 crores, 1 crore, 3 crore, and if you go to NCLT, the other party may say there is no term or period of repayment, therefore there is no question of default, because default will arise only if I have not paid the obligation within the stipulated date. And when there is no term or period of repayment which is specified in the document, then how can you say that it has fallen due on a particular date or that I have committed a default? Again, this will have some implications that a company, say you are a listed company and you are providing loans to group companies without any term or period of repayment, and it does not happen to be a subsidiary, because in subsidiary you have a commercial interest and you have these are your associate companies of promoters and not related to the company. Then the question will arise: why have you diverted funds from this company to another company? To just give you an example, recently in the AGM of Britannia Industries, where they sought to increase the limit under Section 186 for granting of loans and investments, this resolution was defeated for the reason that the shareholders, the minority shareholders or the non-promoter shareholders, did not want that the company should divert funds from the company by way of loans to their group companies or associate companies. Again, under Section 166, as directors, there is an obligation, there is an onerous responsibility of the directors to act in good faith and protect the assets of the company. Therefore, if you are giving loan without specifying any terms or period of payment, and it does not happen to be your subsidiary, or even for the sake of argument, your associate or joint venture where you are having a commercial interest, one can even argue that the directors are in breach of Section 166. Now, the most important point here is that when you are required to prepare this detail, let me invite you to attention of Section 129. Section 129 says that the financial statements are required to be prepared as per accounting standards. So when we give disclosures in the balance sheet of loans and advances to related parties, there is a big contradiction here. Please try and each one of you, please try and listen to this. When in the details of long-term borrowings or short-term borrowings or loans and advances, we give details, we are asked to give details of loans and advances to related parties. There, the related parties means related parties as per Section AS 18. when we give disclosure in as per AS 18 relating to related party transactions, all the related parties carry meaning as per AS 18, sorry, AS 18 related party. But here they have specifically stated in the Schedule 3 that whatever details of promoters, directors, KMPs, and related parties I am seeking, we are seeking in Schedule 3, the definition should be as per the Companies Act. There is a big difference of the definition of related parties of KMP as per Companies Act and as per the accounting standard AS 18. As per Companies Act, KMPs means who are the KMPs? They are the managing director, manager, whole-time director, company secretary, CEO, CFO. But when it comes to AS 18, they say that KMPs are the persons who are responsible for planning, directing, and controlling the affairs of the enterprise. When we talk of related parties, Section 2, Clause 76 of the Companies Act defines related parties, and the list of related parties is very long. Every director is a related party. But when it comes to AS 18, we have 5 categories of related parties: key management person and relatives of key management person, associate joint ventures. As such, we have 5 classifications of related parties. It is not necessary that a simpliciter director can be a related party as per AS 18, but a simpliciter director is a related party as per Companies Act. So this table which you are preparing, the details which you are giving of loans to related parties, it is not necessary that same amount would be required to be stated by you in the disclosure of related parties as per AS 18. It is also not necessary that when you give disclosures of loans given to related parties under the head short-term or long-term advances, those related parties are related parties as per accounting standard. This disclosure which is required is as per Companies Act. So please mind this, because there is a quite fine line of difference between the definition as per Companies Act and as per accounting. Now, when you are giving details, and it happens a lot of implications under Section 185, because if you happen to give loan to a simpliciter director and who is not your managing director or your manager, then there is a complete blanket ban on giving of loan to a simpliciter director. As per Section 185, you cannot give loan to a simpliciter director unless your company happens to be a company to which exemption notification of June 2015 applies. If that is not so, even by passing a special resolution, you cannot give loan to a simpliciter director. So it has implications under Section 185. It may have implications also for deemed dividend under Section 222E. So by preparing the table, we have to be very careful that first we have to give correct disclosures. The definition has to be as per the Companies Act. There must be adequate documentation in respect of the loan transaction. Please see implications whether or not you are violating 185. In case you happen to give loans to private companies where directors are interested, you have passed special resolution. Also ensure that this table does not give in respect given loan to parties to whom deemed dividend provisions are attracted. So these are so this table is very, very important. For capital WIP or intangible assets under development, they have sought disclosure that in case there happens to be a capital work in progress, please give an age analysis of capital work in progress. There may be a capital work in progress where projects have been temporarily suspended. So give disclosures separately for projects which are temporarily suspended. So therefore, if I have a capital work in, what is the intention? Intention is that many companies year on year show capital work in progress. So the government wants to know that in case you have any capital work in progress, you would like to know the age analysis of the capital work in progress. So even the investors are able to know that yes, you had invested in this project, but this project has not commissioned. It's almost more than 3 years, or this project has suspended, and therefore the likely benefits in terms of revenue is not likely to crystallize. So disclosures are important from the perspective of the stakeholders. Now, a lot of question arises whether if say I have 5 projects and all are in progress, whether I have to give details progress project wise? No, you need not give details project wise. It can be for all 5 projects taken together, the age analysis of capital WIP can be given. Now, it may again so happen that current year my project is in progress and it is in the bracket of 1 to 2 years. In the previous year, it was under suspended stage. So whether I need to regroup, rearrange, just like we do in the profit for balance sheet and profit loss figures. No, if in the last year, the previous year, the project was under suspended temporary suspension. So while you give the previous year details of capital WIP in the current year's balance sheet, it would be shown under the suspended category of age analysis. In the current year, if it is in progress, it would be shown in the age analysis of project work or project in progress. A last question which arises as to how do we calculate the age analysis? It would be with reference to the amount spent. Therefore, if my amount spent was in January 21 and I am preparing my balance sheet for 31st March 22, so let us take one more example. I am spending amount from April 20 to March 22 and say every month, April 20 to March 21, April 21 to March 22. For 24 months, I have spent 10 lakh rupees each. The total is 2 crore 40 lakhs. So how do we disclose? So whatever was spent from April 21 to March 22, it would fall within less than 1 year. And whatever was spent prior to April 21, it would fall within the category of 1 to 2 years. So you have to find out the age analysis with respect to the month in which you have spent the amount and calculate whether it falls in which bracket, and accordingly the disclosure should be made here. So Benami property, I think a good discussion has been made, and but what is important here is that in case either you are a holder of a Benami property or you are a beneficiary, so it may happen that in case of your company, the property is subject to attachment. So requisite disclosure are required to be made, or the attachment has been confirmed by the adjudicating authority and you have preferred an appeal. Again, all the requisite disclosures are required to be made. It may so happen that you are not the holder of a beneficiary of the Benami property. A property is held in the name of X Private Limited. Say Y Private Limited is treated as a beneficiary in the order passed by the IO. Then even Y Private Limited has to be disclosed that look, there is a property is held in the name of X Private Limited. We are treated as a beneficiary of the property, and requisite details are required to be given. Now, this table is no longer relevant after the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court in Ganpati Dealscom case, where they have held that Benami law is prospective, and therefore it may so happen that many of the properties which were acquired prior to 2016, following the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, now they are no longer a Benami one. But until that happens and attachment is made or appeal has been filed, requisite disclosures has to be made, and this can be followed by the narrative of the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, which has stated that Benami law is prospective in nature and no penal action can be taken retrospectively. So now these judgments do not carry meaning. This slide requires some changes to be made by me. And I think with the deliberations of Mr. Taneja, I think each one of us is quite aware now the status of the Benami law. So these things are not relevant now. So this is very, very important. And this is one area where we have to do a lot of work. So the question to be answered by the management in the financial statement is that disclosure for borrowings from banks or financial institutions on the basis of security of current assets. So therefore, if you have borrowed from banks or financial institutions, and their financial institution would also cover an NBFC on the basis of security of current assets, whether quarterly statements of returns or statement of current assets filed by the company with banks or institutions is in agreement with the books of account. If not, summary of reconciliations and reasons for material discrepancies, if any, to be disclosed. So first, let us answer some questions, and then we will try and decipher this disclosure. So what they say, that borrowing on the basis of securities of current assets. Therefore, if I borrowed on the basis of security of current assets of not my company but any other third party, then whether this disclosure will apply, to my mind, no, because when they talk of current assets, they talk of current assets of the company, not of the third party. Second question, what constitutes returns or statements? So they have only asked for quarterly returns. Therefore, if I am filing monthly returns for all 12 months, those are not relevant. Only the returns which I am filing as at the end of each quarter, June, September, December, and March, those are relevant. Therefore, if there happens to be any discrepancy for the month of April, May, July, August, those are not relevant. Only if there are discrepancies for the quarter ended June, September, December, March, those are relevant. What constitutes returns or statements? Whatever returns or statements we are required to file in pursuant to our obligation of borrowing, those returns and statements are to be considered. And when I say so, why I say so? Because there was a lot of debate on this. And the question was there whether we file CMA data, whether that is also relevant. This CMA data is in respect of a prospective borrowing to be made by the company or a renewal of my limit. When my limit is sanctioned, banks ask that you please file book date statement, you please file stock statement, because this is very relevant for finding out your drawing power. So you may have a limit of say 5 crores or 10 crores, but your drawing power is only 4 crores or 8 crores. So bank will allow you to withdraw only 4 crores and 8 crores. Borrowing beyond the drawing power is generally not permitted. In some cases, bank may permit drawing beyond borrowing power. The manager may permit if he is authorized to do so, but again within the sanction limit. And at times banks also allow drawing beyond sanction limit. But the intent of this stock and book date statement is that it enables the bank to calculate your DP, drawing power. So only those stock returns, stock statements, and any other document in relation to borrowing which we file with the banks or financial institutions are required to be covered. Whether non-fund based borrowing would be covered, yes. Even if you have been given bank guarantees, even if we have been given letter of trades, those also would be covered. Now, there may happen that I have filed quarterly return, and what are, as an auditors, we are supposed to do? We are only supposed to take the return in our hand, see the quantum of debtors which we have given, see the books of accounts, and whether as on that date, the books of accounts which showed debtor accurately matches with the returns filed. So therefore, if for the quarter ended, the debtor was given at 5 crores and my book balance of 30th June is 5 crores, that is 5, that is fine. The guidance note states that you are not required to audit the debtor as on 30th June to find out whether the quantum of debtor of 5 crores was correctly stated or not for the purpose of this clause, subject to an element of fraud that which we will also which you can detect in the usual course of our audit. But subject to any element of fraud, you have to just match the quantum of figures of debtors of stock shown in the books of account with the stock records, books of accounts and the statements. A difficulty arises when the company has furnished the value of the stock of finished goods and WIP, because generally we would not find this in the books of accounts as to what is the value of finished stock as on 30th June in respect of many small and medium enterprises. So therefore, that is a difficulty. In respect of entities who maintain accounts in SAP, perhaps they would be able to find out what is the value of the finished stock as per books of accounts as well. But in respect of small and medium entities who maintain their accounts on something software like Tally or ACE, it may not be possible for them to find out what is the value of finished stock as per books of accounts. So we have to question the company that, look, you have submitted value of finished goods quantity, that is fine, you can get from the stock register. Even WIP, how have you furnished the value of WIP of the finished goods? Try to find out how it is correlated to the books of accounts. If you are able to find out, yes, it is correlated to the books of accounts in the following manner, because normally the companies, when give disclosures, they calculate value of finished goods based on the selling price as reduced by the gross profit margin. That is how generally companies calculate. Now, there was a case where there is a difference between the books and returns. A question arises whether we can revise the returns. This point was also before the institute while we were preparing the guidance note. We had made a point that yes, even if the company revises the return and banks accept the return, then the revised return should be considered because this is the first year. This is the first year. There may be some mistakes. So in case there are mistakes, let them correct it. But institute did not put this point specifically in the guidance note. But yes, view can be taken, and we are taking a view that yes, if there are any discrepancies which are material, you are going to revise the book date and stock statement to the bankers. I think that should be a sufficient compliance. But again, a question arises that, look, if I have revised the bank's statement, then there may be, if say my stock was reported earlier at 10 crores, now I report at say 9.5 crores. So there may be a fall in drawing power resulting in additional charge of interest. So that is possible. That is a separate thing for the company to look. But if the discrepancies are material, I think you should advise your client to revise the returns. Maybe this was the first year. In the second year, the entity himself knows that yes, this is the thing which is not only I am required to report, but even the auditor will be required to be report in the Caro report. Therefore, they would be quite careful maybe from next year. But this year, I think one can follow this process. Again, they have talked of material discrepancies. So what constitutes material? Again, we have to judge in the context of a materiality standard, auditing standard, and then see whether it is material to the financial statements or not. So they have given a disclosure format that what is the amount reported in the statement, what is as per books, give the difference, and what give the reasons for material discrepancies. So now, in case the company has any transaction with stock of companies under section 248 or 560, you are required to give the disclosure in the following format. So transactions with stock of companies may be that you hold certain investments in the companies which have stock of. You may have certain receivables or payables or other outstandings to the companies which have been struck off. And it may also be a case where you hold certain shares in the company which has been struck off as a shareholder. So some of your shareholders are companies whose shares have been which have been struck off. So your register of members shows name of some entities who have been struck off from the register of members. So if it is so, then all those disclosures as sought are required to be given. Plus, they have also asked for give relationship with the stock of company. What is your relationship? Now, how do we understand what is our relationship? The guidance note has said, please read the word relationship as with reference to related parties. So if they happen to be a related party, please give the nature of the relationship with that company as a related party. If they are not, then you may say it is not a related party. Now, there arises some issues. How to determine stock of companies? So the only option is that you have to go to the MCA website. There you get the list of all stock of companies by the respective registrars. For ROC Calcutta, you have one list. ROC Bombay, you have one list. So on, compile the list and then use some tools or ask your client to apply some tools to find out if any of the client masters and if any of the entries, any of the companies which feature in that list happen to be a company with whom any transaction may have taken place during the year or may have outstanding balances as at year end, or you may hold investments or they may be shareholders of your company. So this is a difficult exercise. I agree, because it may be that I have my client as a client master or a vendor or a customer running in thousands. So then this list you have to compile and do some VLOOKUP and find out really your relationship, if any, with the stock of companies. Now, whether companies under liquidation or liquidated or amalgamated, they are covered. They are not covered because the standard talks of the companies which are struck off, companies which are liquidated or amalgamated are not covered under 248 or 560 of the Companies Act. Now, what are the implications of shares held by struck off companies? Therefore, if I have certain investments in companies which are struck off, possibly I have to consider whether I need a provision or I need to write off. I may write off the investments if I believe that the net worth has completely eroded and there is no likelihood of the revival of the company. I may make a provision instead of write off if I am of the view that the company has been struck off for non-compliance by the regulator. But yes, this company has credibility, it has assets, and it has been struck off for the time being. But as investors, or maybe I am director of that company, will take steps to revive the company by going to NCLT. And therefore, in that case, maybe a provision is sufficient. Now, in case the company has been struck off but revived pursuant to NCLT order. So therefore, say I had a transaction with the company X Private Limited. It got struck off in financial year 21-22. As on 31st March 22, it was struck off. But say before the balance sheet date, this company has revived. Therefore, what happens then? Since it is a adjusting event, post balance sheet date, before the signing of financial statements, this company has revived pursuant to an order of NCLT. The due or receivable or investment or shares of this held by this company need not be stated under this table. Now, willful defaulter. If your company happens to be an NPA, then there is a possibility that the company may have been declared as a willful defaulter by a bank or financial institution. The definition of willful defaulter is also given by the guidance note on Schedule 3. Now, what happens if you see there is a process for declaring a person as a in person or an entity as a willful defaulter. Once the process is followed, a paper advertisement is published by the bank declaring that this company is declared as a willful defaulter. Question arises, how do I find whether the company is a willful defaulter or not? Maybe from public announcements, or it is not. It is very difficult to track all the public announcements in newspapers. So when we seek balance confirmation from the banks and your client happens to be NPA, an additional question can be posed to the bank that whether you have declared this entity as a willful defaulter. So based on the response from the bank, maybe some search at the public domain, because details of public defaulter are shared by the bankers also on the public domain. You can find out whether the entity is declared as a public defaulter, a willful defaulter. This is very, again, question which is the management is also required to answer. We are also required to answer in the Caro report. Whether any charges or satisfaction are yet to be registered. So therefore, you have created a charge which is not registered. There has been a satisfaction of charge. The charge satisfaction form has not been filed. There are time limits for that. Now, beyond time limits, you can also pay additional fees and file it, or again go for condonation of delay and file it. So a few things are very important. So section 77 does not give a list of charges which are required to be registered, unlike the previous Companies Act 1956, which gave a list of the charges which require registration. Even a pledge, even a lien on a FD is a charge. But often we see that if you take OD against an FD, no charge is created. If there is a loan against pledge of shares from any bank or any financial institution, say any NBFC stockbrokers on and off take loan against pledge of shares, all those, many of the pledges are not registered. Even say we have taken a vehicle loan, transport company has taken a vehicle, a truck loan from NBFCs. They regularly keep on taking, and charges were registered. But once the loan was repaid, they just take the blue book, forget satisfaction of the charge, also do not take the no due letter from the bank. So in bank is more concerned about creation of charge rather than satisfaction of charge. So therefore, please go and visit MCA website. Please see the register of charges of the company and find out if any charges are pending satisfaction, the amount has been cleared. If it is so that the charges have not been satisfied, there are cases we have seen in various cases we have seen they are lying unsatisfied for a number of years. So therefore, you have not to follow the process of law and satisfy the charges. If not till the balance sheet date, then reporting is required to be made here. And even as auditors in Caro, you are required to make the reporting. So again, these are very difficult things, and especially for pledge against shares, for lien against FD. Because why is bank not interested for creation of charge also? Because it has the FD. So bank is not bothered, because since it has the fixed deposit, whether or not you create the charge, it does not matter to bank, because the asset is also with the bank, liability is also with the bank. But when it comes to say charge on immovable properties, that is important, because in case of charge on immovable properties or charge against stock and book debts, in bank to enforce its security interest would always want you to create the charge, and then only disbursement will be made. Now, restriction on layers. This is again important. You cannot have more than 2 layers, and other than 1 layer of wholly owned subsidiaries is excluded. Therefore, if you have more than 2 layers of subsidiaries, again disclosure is required here. Scheme of arrangement. This is very interesting. You see, under the Companies Act 2013, when you file any application, a scheme for merger or demerger, in the act there is a provision which says that the auditor is required to give a certificate to the effect that the accounting treatment provided in the scheme of amalgamation is in accordance with the accounting standards. So auditor examines the scheme and sees the accounting treatment paragraph, and it gives a disclosure to the effect that, look, a certificate to the effect that, look, this is the accounting treatment prescribed by this company in the scheme of merger or demerger. It is in conformity with the accounting standards. A certificate is given. For amalgamation, we have AS 14. For demerger, we do not have any standard, but yet an auditor is required to give a certificate. So it follows some principles of AS 14 only for the purpose of demerger by giving the certificate. Although for demerger, we do not have any accounting standard. Now, even NCLT, even the regional director, while they give their NOC or while they sanction the scheme, ensure that that certificate is there, and only thereafter they sanction the scheme. Now, management, the government wants that, look, you have a scheme, it has been sanctioned, auditor has given a certificate, but again, we do not believe the company in the sense that you may not have followed the accounting treatment which is prescribed in the scheme certified by the auditor when you are preparing the amalgamated balance sheet. So now we want again a certificate, again a statement from you that yes, I am following only the accounting treatment which is in accordance with accounting standards. And if deviation is there, it is to be stated. As such, if there is any deviation, even the auditor will qualify his report, because that may amount to a very serious mistake in the sense that you are not complying with something like a court order, NCLT order. Now, this is a question which generally will not applicable, will be in the affirmative that no, we have not done any non-compliance of this. So the intent of this question and the next question, which is to replied by the management, is that there are companies A, B, C, D, E. A is the company which we are auditing. A gave loan to B with the understanding that B will give loan to C, C will give to D, D will give to E. So these A, B, C, D, E may happen in the same jurisdiction or different jurisdiction. Some companies may be in Mauritius, Bahamas, Cayman Islands. Some companies may be in India. So what is the intent of this question is that A wanted to give loan to E, but A wanted to mask itself. It did not want to reveal its identity, and therefore A gave, by giving loan to B, ensured through a document that B will give to C, C to D, D to E, so that it goes through layers. The source of money cannot be easily traced. One cannot find out that what is the source of money for E, whether it is A or not. So these type of transactions does not generally happen in case of SMEs, so we are not answering. So we are not much discussing on this. Again, ratios are very important. All the ratios are adequately defined in the guidance note. Again, what is important that there it may not be necessary that two companies apply the same numerator and denominator for calculating the ratios. It again depends upon for different sector of companies. For maybe for NBFCs, the definition of ratio may be a little different compared to a manufacturing company. So how do you calculate ratios? Again, it depends upon how the industry calculates, how the research report relating those to those industries, and while the persons who prepare the research reports, how do they calculate what is the meaning of a current ratio or what is the meaning of a debt equity ratio. So all ratios are very well defined in the balance sheet. So now say trade receivables turnover ratio. What they have said, generally, how do we understand a trade receivables ratio is sales by trade receivables. So what they say, not the sales by trade receivables or trade receivables by sale, whatever, the net credit sales. So it is very difficult to determine what is the net credit sales out of the total sales. Very difficult. Again, on materiality, you may choose, because when I talk of trade receivables turnover ratio, obviously what is my credit turnover ratio? If I sell entirely in cash, say if I say entirely in cash and I have no trade receivable, then this ratio is meaningless. But let us say that I have a turnover of 1,000 crores, 800 crores is in cash, 200 crores is by way of a credit, and out of 200 crores, and say a month on month, I have made a sales of say evenly a 15 or 16 crores sales year month on month, and I have a credit period of only 1 month. Therefore, only 16 crores lies as at the year end on account of trade receivables. But if I calculate trade receivables turnover ratio with respect to 16 and my 1,000, it may not be correct because my credit sale is only 200. So that is why the guidance note had said that when you are calculating trade receivables and trade payables turnover ratio, this should be calculated with reference to your trade sales only. So again, please see the guidance note, and one thing more, what they have stated, that when you calculate the ratio, say current ratio, we will say current assets, current liabilities. So these are two line items in the balance sheet, so that is fine. But when I calculate, say, debt equity ratio, so my debt will be maybe short-term borrowings plus long-term borrowings. And when I'm talking of equity, it may be equity plus reserves and surplus, shareholders fund plus or share capital plus reserves or shareholder funds, or it may be equity share capital plus some reserves minus some reserves. Like revaluation reserve will not be included in debt equity ratio. So whatever the numerator and denominator you are including here in the debt equity ratio, please ensure that it matches with one of the line items. It matches with one or more of the line items in the stated in the balance sheet. Try and ensure that. When it comes to debt coverage ratio, service coverage ratio, when we calculate, this is profit before tax plus depreciation plus interest plus any non-cash write-offs divided by the interest, that is the finance cost, plus the principal amount of repayments which has happened over the year. So this principal amount of repayment which has happened in the previous year, we have to calculate on your own, and this will not be with reference to any particular, you cannot correlate this directly with any line item on the balance sheet. So this is some definition which again we have borrowed from the guide. Whatever you have said, it is from the guidance note. Just see what they have said in respect of this interest coverage ratio, debt service coverage ratio. Profit before interest, depreciation, tax, and exceptional items divided by interest expense plus short-term debt, repayment of short-term debt. So for current year as well as previous year, you are required to state if there is any variance. Reason for variance should be stated. For example, last year my profit was 1 crore. This year my profit is say 20 crores. So there may be an increase in a ratio which is linked to the profit. The increase in profit may happen due to say sale of some capital assets, or maybe due to improvement in operations. So whatever is the reasons for variance. So therefore, say if I have sold one of my capital asset, immovable property, which has resulted in a gain of 8 or 9 or 10 crores, then it would be the reasons for variance would be that a sale of immovable property which has resulted in a profit of so much is the reason for variance. Again, in case of what happens, what they have asked is a very interesting question. That look, there was a search in the company. During the course of search or survey, you have made some admissions that yes, this is the amount of the income which I understand it has been is my concealed income. So management during the course of search say there was suppression in sales, and due to some loose diaries or some entries or statement by some third parties, the management admits that yes, I was selling at 100 rupees, but in my books it is only recorded as 85 rupees. So 15% is my undisclosed sale, or there were some bogus expenses. Again, management has admitted that these are bogus expenses. So the company pays the tax thereon. Now the government wants to know that you have paid the tax on the income. The income is not in the books. The expenditure you have falsely claimed in the books and taken out the money, but the tax on the bogus expenditure has also been paid by the company. So what happens to the money? Where is the money? And please tell us how this money has been brought back in the books of accounts of the company. So therefore, and whether the income, unrecorded income and related assets have been, obviously, if they have, taken suppressed sales or done some bogus expense and they admit, then it is very difficult to answer, because it may also amount to an act of fraud. 447, 448 will apply, 185 will be violated, 166 will be violated. So generally, companies would deny and dispute. They may, under coercion, give some statement during search or survey, but they would retract it later, and the dispute will be contested in appeal. If this is so, then this is fine. But if it is not so, and they have admitted the admission and paid the tax, then answer is very difficult. They have to explain where is that suppressed sale gone and how will they bring this money in the books of accounts. Therefore, it may only so happen if they say that yes, 15 rupees is the amount which I had taken in cash, I was using for personal purposes. Now 15 rupees, I am bringing back this money in the accounts. So 15 rupees, they will bring back that money in the books of accounts in the form of cash. Practically, this may not happen, but yes, if it so happens, then this suitable disclosure of how this 15 money has been brought back in the books of accounts would require to be given by the management. Revenue from operations, crypto and virtual currency, if there are any transactions in crypto, disclosure is required to be made. CSR, this is very important. Again, this is the disclosure format. So there are two limbs to this. One, this disclosure table is fine, but some on points of law that you are required to contribute to a trust or an entity or a society or whatever entity which is MCA registered. If it is not registered with MCA, then perhaps you will not get CSR benefit. There is a change in definition of net profit post 2021. So please find out whether, and there are three criteria of turnover, profit and net worth. You have to calculate the net profit as defined, whether your net profit is 5 crores. For this, you have to see the definition as per section 198 read with CSR rules. If you have failed to spend 2%, then you have time till 30th September that you transfer the money to a fund specified in Schedule 7. If you do not do, then penal consequences will follow. As such, this whenever it will be detected by the registrar of companies or MCA, then not only you will be required to spend the amount, but in addition to that, you will also required to pay a penalty. So that is for sure. I think in time to come, those who have failed to spend the amount there are many companies which have even not spent in FY21, which they were mandatorily required to spend. Then it is a matter of time. Notice from MCA will come. They will have to spend the amount. Only option is transfer to Schedule 7, plus the company as well as directors will be required to pay a penalty. Now, if it happens to contribution to your project, again by project, and the implementing agency may be a trust set up by the company or a third party, then unspent amount within 30 days has to be transferred to an unspent amount by the company. Therefore, if you have given the amount to the trust, whether or not controlled by you, and it has not been able to spend the 31st March, the requisite amount of your contribution, then the amount has to be taken back and kept in a separate bank account, unspent corporate social responsibility account. So these were the amendments in audit reports. So this is not applicable. This is in director's report. These two are amendments in director's report. We now come to some questions. Yeah, lot many questions are there.
मैं मोहित कुछ क्वेश्चंस है, मैं पूछ लूं क्या तुमसे वन बाय वन?
आप इसमें डालो, मैं एक एक को बोलता जाता हूँ. So what if the client has not maintained MSME wise details? You see, if you have trade payables and those trade payables happens to MSME, आपको डिटेल रखना पड़ेगा. आपको क्लाइंट को बोलना पड़ेगा कि आप वेंडर का सारा डिटेल जो है लीजिए, वेंडर रजिस्ट्रेशन फॉर्म भरवाइए, उसमें बताइए MSME है कि नहीं. तो देयरफॉर अगर आपका क्लाइंट ने वो सब कुछ नहीं किया है, तो यू आर ऑल्सो एन ऑब्लिगेशन टू राइट डायरेक्टली, जैसे हम लोग डायरेक्ट कंफर्मेशंस लेते हैं, राइट टू ऑल दोस पार्टीज कि आप MSME है कि नहीं है. अगर MSME है तो उद्योग आधार या उद्यम रजिस्ट्रेशन वो सब आप सर्टिफिकेट दीजिए. तो दिस इज एन ऑब्लिगेशन विच मस्ट बी कंप्लाइड विद, बिकॉज ऑल्सो इफ यू सी MSME का 2 फॉर्म हमको हाफ ईयरली फाइल भी करना पड़ता है आरोपी के पास.
लेकिन अब ऐसा है कि मोहित इसमें थोड़ा सा मैं पूछना चाहूंगा कि बहुत बार क्या होता है, क्लाइंट इन्फॉर्मेशन तो दे देता है लेकिन इन्फॉर्मेशन सही है कि नहीं ये भी पता नहीं है.
सर पता चलेगा, ऐसे पता चलेगा कि कैसे पता चलेगा? ऐसे आपको पता चलेगा कि क्लाइंट ने आपको जो इन्फॉर्मेशन दिया है, क्लाइंट को सबको आप डेटर का कंफर्मेशन आप कैसे करते हो? डेटर का कंफर्मेशन आप खुद ही बोलते हो कि मेरे को डेटर का लिस्ट दे दीजिए, मैं कंफर्मेशन भेजता हूँ सारा का सारा, और या आप क्लाइंट को बोलते हो कि ठीक है सारा कंफर्मेशन भेजो, आप बनाओ, वो आप भेजो, हमको उसका रिसीट दो और वो डायरेक्टली मेरे पास आना चाहिए. तो नेट ये है कि ये सारा आपका सुपरविजन में हो रहा है. इट इज नॉट सफिशिएंट टू से दैट क्लाइंट ने भेजा सारा कंफर्मेशन, वो कंफर्मेशन में लिख दिया कि सेंड डायरेक्टली टू मिस्टर सच एंड सच ऑडिटर. दैट इज नॉट सफिशिएंट. You have to ensure कि क्लाइंट ने एक्चुअली भेजा है, that was within your control, under your supervision, और अब रिप्लाई आपके पास आएंगे. तो व्हाट वी जनरली डू, हम लोग सारा का सारा क्लाइंट से डेटा लेके, लेजर्स लेके, मेल आईडी लेके, क्लाइंट को माने क्लाइंट से परमिशन लेके सारा का सारा अपना ईमेल आईडी से भेज देते हैं. जैसे जैसे रिप्लाईज आता है उसको कोलेट करके एक्सेल फाइल बना के जो डिफरेंसेस है वो और उसका रिकंसिलिएशन करते हैं. वैसे MSME का भी आपको
इसमें एक क्वेश्चन उठता है कि अगर 45 डेज से ज्यादा अगर किसी का 45 डेज से ज्यादा अगर आउटस्टैंडिंग हो जाती है, तो एक हमको सेक्शन 22 के अंदर में जो एक देना पड़ता है, नोटिफिकेशन के अंदर में जो डिस्क्लोजर देना पड़ता है, तो वहां पे हमको इंटरेस्ट कंप्यूट भी करके दिखना पड़ेगा कि कितना इंटरेस्ट पेबल नहीं है.
आपको वो क्लाइंट, यू सी, if your credit term, whatever is your credit term, if your credit term is less than 45 days and you get the payment within 45 days, fine. If your credit term is 60 days, but maximum credit term allowed for MSME is 45 days. तो 45 days के beyond अगर कोई outstanding है during the year था या 31st March में है, then there is an obligation to pay interest. कल को वो कंपनी चला जाएगा MSME facilitation council में, तो it will obviously pass an order कि आपको इंटरेस्ट देना पड़ेगा. तो आपको बुक्स में बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ लॉ इंटरेस्ट प्रोवाइड करना पड़ेगा इन केस देयर इज एनी डिले with respect to the contractual terms in payment of dues to MSME beyond the contractual terms or beyond 45 days, whichever is less. अगर है तो आपको इंटरेस्ट बुक्स में प्रोवाइड करना पड़ेगा. This interest will not be allowed as deduction for tax purposes.
This is a very tough, इस बार के लिए है.
टफ तो मतलब ऐसा है ना, आप क्लाइंट को इम्प्रेस करेंगे तो क्या होता है, ठीक है, व्हाट वी अंडरस्टैंड वो है, बट लॉ इज माने दिस इज द लॉ. अब आपको वो देखना पड़ेगा हाउ डू वी गेट दिस लॉ कंप्लाइड by the client. But there are practical difficulties, but this is the law.
Correct.
Now next is a small company has free reserve of 2 crore. Caro does not apply to small company, irrespective आपका कितना भी reserve हो. तो therefore if you are a small company under 2 clause 85, Caro will not apply to you. The next question is agency deposit refundable to two parties 60 lakhs each if the company is not refunding, whether both can go jointly. So you see, who can go to NCLT? Only if you have a financial creditor or an operational creditor. assuming if you fall in one of the categories and if the quantum is 1 crore outstanding, then you can go. The question is, assuming you are a financial and operational creditor, taken together the amount exceeds 1 crore. I think we have a recent judgment where they have allowed such an application. I think so, but I'm not very sure. But I think in the last 1 month or two, there was one case where multiple parties also, when have gone to NCLT and the aggregate exposure of was beyond 1 crore, NCLT has admitted, has considered the application. Next, in case of trade payables, bills are accounted for on passing of bill, whereas date of bill is different and it is not possible to do the aging of the bill. Sir, ऐसा है कि when it may so happen कि उसने 25 मार्च का बिल रेज किया, आपके पास गुड्स आते आते 28 या 29 मार्च हो गया, गुड्स आपने एक्सेप्ट किया और उसका गुड्स का एंट्री 29 तारीख को कर दिया. तो फर्स्ट इज, अगर हम 29 तारीख मार्च से, ये फरवरी का बात है, तो हम 29 तारीख का तो हमको एंट्री कर लेना चाहिए था 28 या 29 फरवरी को. वंस गुड्स आर एक्सेप्टेड बाय मी, तो मेरा उसका लायबिलिटी ड्यू हो गया. अगर हम इस 29 फरवरी के जगह हम 15 मार्च या 31 मार्च को करते हैं, तो देन प्रॉपर बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स आर नॉट मेंटेन्ड. हम उस बुक्स को ठीक से नहीं रख रहे हैं. Irrespective whatever it may be, my age analysis would start from the date when they are due for payment, not when they are not due. मतलब there is one more point कि जो टेबल हमको देना है वहाँ this is with reference to due when they are due. तो अगर कोई मेरा ड्यू ही नहीं है पेमेंट के लिए, तो वहां पे हमको एक नॉट ड्यू कॉलम ऐड करके उसको लिखना पड़ेगा. बट assuming it has fallen due, so my age analysis would start from the date when the amount was due. ये आपको ध्यान, when the amount was actually due for recognition in your books. तो अगर हमको 29 फरवरी की जगह हमने 15 मार्च को एंट्री किया है और हम एज एनालिसिस 15 मार्च के हिसाब से कर रहे हैं, then it is incorrect. Next question is quarterly statement filed for date other than the quarter, say 7th. Question is, the law requires आपको जो quarterly statement फाइल करना है वही. तो अगर आप 27th मार्च को फाइल किए हैं for the March quarter, then technically it is quarterly. Maybe आप 1 जनवरी से 27 मार्च का कर रहे हैं या आप 26 दिसंबर से 27 मार्च का कर रहे हैं, then it is technically quarterly. हम उसको literally नहीं interpret करें 30th June, 30th September, 30th March. What is there? Monthly statements is outside the scope, but quarterly statements. क्योंकि अगर ऐसा सिचुएशन होगा कि हम 30th जून की जगह हर बार 26 तारीख को एवरी क्वार्टर अगर देते हैं कि 26 जून को दिए, 26 सितंबर, 26 दिसंबर, 26 मार्च, and I say that it is not as at the end of the quarter, then it would be something not within the spirit of the law. Is there any limit specified for bond borrowings or any amount of bank borrowings then reconciliation statement? मैंने जो शेड्यूल 3 में डिस्क्लोजर है इन रिलेशन टू एनी डिस्क्रिपेंसीज, इट अप्लाइज इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द क्वांटम. हमारे को कारो में रिपोर्ट करना है 5 करोड़ के ऊपर अगर मेरा क्लाइंट कोई से लिया है तो, बट मैनेजमेंट को बोला आपने 1 लाख का भी लोन लिया है कैश क्रेडिट, 50 लाख का भी लिया है, उसके लिए आपने अगर बुक डेट और स्टॉक स्टेटमेंट कुछ फाइल किया और वो गलत है तो भी आपको देना पड़ेगा.
मोहित, एक चीज समझना चाहता हूँ, डिस्टर्ब कर रहा हूँ. क्वार्टरली के अंदर में जैसे हर क्वार्टर का 30th को जा रहा है, लेकिन मार्च का खाली 27th मार्च को जा रहा है, ये 28th को जा रहा है, 25th को जा रहा है.
Technically it is quarter. Technically it is quarter. You have filed prior to that, but technically it is quarter. What would be the treatment of shares of client company held by company stuck off? What would be the treatment of shares of client company held by company stuck off?
इसका implication क्या हो सकता है? इसका ultimately क्या कि इसका implication क्या हो सकता है?
Correct. तो therefore मेरा एक मालिक है, मेरा एक शेयर होल्डर है, a company which is stuck off. Therefore a company is stuck off. उसके पास पॉसिबिलिटी है रिवाइव करने का. उसका जो भी डिविडेंड वगैरह होगा वो सेपरेट बैंक अकाउंट में रखेंगे. उसके बाद 7 साल तक क्लेम नहीं रहेगा तो गवर्नमेंट को ट्रांसफर कर लेंगे. अगर वो कंपनी बाद में स्टक ऑफ रिवाइव होके कर लिया तो उसको मिल जाएगा. अज्यूमिंग कुछ भी नहीं होता है तो ईयर ऑन ईयर मेरा वही बेसिस पे चलेगा. तो क्वेश्चन खाली ये कह सकता है कि अगर हमको नोटिस ऑफ एजीएम देना है, से फॉर एग्जांपल थियोरेटिकली, तो हम किसको देंगे? तो जब कंपनी है ही नहीं तो हम किसको दें? ऑब्वियसली किसी को हम नहीं देंगे. टिल और 7 साल बाद जब वो शेयर्स है उसका डिविडेंड भी क्लेम नहीं होगा, डिविडेंड भी नहीं क्लेम होगा तो वो शेयर्स गवर्नमेंट को चला जाएगा। तो दिस इज आपके पास कोई ऑप्शन
डिविडेंड
नहीं
डिक्लेयर
है।
नहीं कर रही है, उस केस में क्या हो?
वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि वो आपका कंपनी का एक मेंबर है, तो आपको कहाँ डिफिकल्टी आएगी कि हम अगर डिविडेंड, हम नोटिस ऑफ एजीएम किसको दें, तो वो तो है ही नहीं, तो किसको देंगे, उसका डिविडेंड किसको दें, उसका डिविडेंड आप उसको उसके आपका बैंक अकाउंट उस डिटेल नहीं है, तो आप उसको एक सेपरेट अनपेड डिविडेंड अकाउंट में रखेंगे। 7 साल से ज्यादा जब हो जाएगा तब आप उसको 200 ये 125C के तहत गवर्नमेंट को ट्रांसफर कर देंगे, शेयर्स उसका गवर्नमेंट को ट्रांसफर कर देंगे, उसके बाद गवर्नमेंट को नोटिस जाएगा।
सर ये बेनामी ट्रीट नहीं होगा ना?
हाउ डू आई से बेनामी कैसे होगा? बेनामी मीन्स शेयर्स हेल्ड बाय यू जिसका पैसा किसी और ने दिया है। हाउ इज इट बेनामी? इट मे सो से एग्जांपल मैं बोलता हूँ, 248,560 में कौन कंपनी स्ट्राइक ऑफ होता है? विच हैज नॉट फाइल्ड बैलेंस शीट एंड एनुअल रिटर्न्स फॉर एन नंबर ऑफ ईयर्स। ठीक है, और अभी तो ये भी आ गया कि आरओसी रजिस्टर्ड ऑफिस वेरिफिकेशन के लिए गया, उसने देखा वहां रजिस्टर्ड ऑफिस नहीं है कैपेबल ऑफ रिसीविंग नोटिसेज, तो वो बाय एन ऑर्डर कंपनी को शो कॉज करेगा, हम क्यों नहीं आपका कंपनी को स्ट्राइक ऑफ करें। अभी जस्ट जो लास्ट 10-15 दिन में सर्कुलर है, एंड इट स्ट्राइक्स ऑफ द कंपनी, तो इंसिडेंटली दैट कंपनी हैपेंस टू बी वन ऑफ योर शेयर होल्डर, सो व्हाट, वो एज एनी अदर थर्ड पार्टी शेयर होल्डर रहेगा, बट ठीक है, हमारे को माइंड में स्ट्राइक करता रहेगा कि दिस इज अ स्टॉक ऑफ शेयर होल्डर। कोई उपाय नहीं है इसका। How to show a leasehold property not registered in the name of the company, whether it can be shown separately under right of use का concept सिर्फ Ind AS में है, AS में right of use का नहीं है। अगर leasehold property है, it is not registered in the name of the company, तो पहले मेरे को देखना पड़ेगा whether it was required. Say it is a 99 years lease, it required registration, but it is not held in the name of the company. Therefore जो हमारा कारो का डिस्क्लोजर है और मैनेजमेंट का भी जो डिस्क्लोजर है कि टाइटल डीड्स नॉट हेल्ड इन द नेम ऑफ द कंपनी, इसका हमको डिस्क्लोजर देना पड़ेगा। एएस में राइट ऑफ यूज का कंसेप्ट नहीं है। लोन फ्रॉम बैंक ऑन सिक्योरिटीज हेल्ड बाय थर्ड पार्टी, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। तो बहुत बार क्वेश्चन आता है कि आई हैव टेकन अ लोन, दिस लोन इज सिक्योर्ड बाय immovable property of a director, or this loan is secured only by personal guarantee of director, और कोई सिक्योरिटी नहीं है। तो पहला सिचुएशन, I have taken a borrowing of 10 crores, इसका सिक्योरिटी है प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ द डायरेक्टर और प्रोमोटर, तो दिस इज नॉट अ सिक्योर्ड लोन, बिकॉज सिक्योर्ड लोन्स मींस कि मेरा कंपनी का सिक्योरिटी को मॉर्गेज या प्लेज या हाइपोथेकेट करके अगर कोई लोन लिया है तो दैट इज अ सिक्योर्ड लोन, तो इट विल बी केस ऑफ अनसिक्योर्ड लोन। सेकेंड सिचुएशन, I have taken a loan from a bank, security है only personal guarantee of a director, again that is not a secured loan because this is loan not secured by the tangible assets of the company, so it will also be treated as an unsecured loan. Whether these ratios are to be given in case of an NBFC not falling under Ind AS, yes, these ratios are required to be given for all companies, whether NBFCs or not NBFCs. What would be the rate of interest for not paying to MSME within 45 days? The rate of interest is 3 times the bank rate, that is prescribed in MSME Act, 3 times the bank rate means RBI rate, and not necessarily 45 days. अगर आपका credit term MSME से 7 days है, तो beyond 7 days if there is any delay, तो भी आपको interest देना पड़ेगा। Is changes in Schedule 3 applicable to all companies? Yes, changes in Schedule 3 is applicable to all companies, private limited, public limited, unlisted companies. Next, what if the company is not following labor laws fully? Example, labor contractors are not complying. So labor laws fully का सर थोड़ा clearly meaning बताइए। If I are able to understand that कि हमने कोई contractor employ किया है, हम उस contractor को payment कर रहे हैं, I am hiring say security guards, facilitation staffs from these contractor, हम अपने रोल पे नहीं रखना चाहते हैं, तो PF ESI का obligation है, उसको discharge करना पड़ेगा और हमको उसको पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा। Assuming वो नहीं कर रहा है तो I am a defaulter under PF law, ESI law. As a principal,
सर इसमें कोई डिस्क्लोजर देना पड़ेगा क्या अगर लेबर?
करेक्ट, तो देयरफॉर से हम कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को आई हैव हायर्ड से 100 सिक्योरिटी गार्ड्स, तो हम सिक्योरिटी गार्ड्स का उसको 10,000 करके पेमेंट कर रहे हैं, प्लस उसका 10% मार्कअप पे कर रहे हैं, पीएफ ईएसआई नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो देयरफॉर आई एम वायलेटिंग पीएफ लॉ, ईएसआई लॉ। अंडर एसए 250 आपको मैनेजमेंट को बताना पड़ेगा, आपको फिर कैलकुलेट करना पड़ेगा व्हाट इज द पीएफ एंड ईएसआई। अगेन देयर विल बी a note for non provision of pf and esi because this will impact the truth and fairness of financial statements. Rounding off 1, 2, 3, 4 can be sold at 12.3400. Yes, Tony, 12.3400. हाँ ठीक है, this is so possible. In Caro report, what quantum of difference in stock as per books and as submitted to bank is to be reported or reason? Both. हमको quantum भी देना होगा कि what is my quantum of stock reported as per books, as per bank, what is the difference, what is the reason for difference. चारों हमको देना पड़ेगा. In respect of fixed assets, there is a question that do we need to provide each class of assets wise? Yes. तो जैसे अब समझ लो आप 22 का फिक्स एसेट का शेड्यूल बना दिए, तो आप मार्च 21 में फिक्स एसेट का शेड्यूल दिए थे, रिप्लिका उसको कॉपी करना पड़ेगा. ये मैटर कई बार आया है फाइनेंशियल रिव्यू रिपोर्टिंग बोर्ड में, और फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग रिव्यू रिपोर्टिंग बोर्ड ने भी ये कॉल लिया है कि खाली आप लास्ट ईयर का टोटल दे देने से नहीं चलेगा. अगर हम इस साल का लैंड का ओरिजिनल कॉस्ट, एडिशन, डिडक्शन, टोटल डेप्रिसिएशन फॉर द ईयर, क्यूमुलेटिव जो दे रहे हैं, जितना लाइन आइटम, सारा का सारा लाइन आइटम फॉर प्रीवियस ईयर भी देना पड़ेगा. तो
हम ईच एंड एवरी एसेट के नीचे भी दे सकते हैं या अलग से शेड्यूल भी दे सकते हैं, दोनों
एक ही बात है. आप हाँ एक ही बात है, आप ब्रैकेट में दे दो या पूरा का पूरा टेबल को कॉपी कर दो.
लेकिन अभी क्या ना कि कई जो इलस्ट्रेटिव कॉपी जा रही है उसमें कोई भी सिस्टम को फॉलो नहीं कर रहा. दे ऑल आर फॉलोइंग द ओल्ड सिस्टम ऑफ ओनली 1 ईयर.
नहीं, दोनों साल का देना पड़ेगा. किसी ये जो चेंजेस जितने भी आए हैं अभी इस बार, इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ दोस ऑल डिटेल्स फॉर करंट ईयर एज वेल एज प्रीवियस ईयर यू हैव टू गिव. अभी क्या है ना, कहीं पे भी जनरली मैं बोलता हूँ अगर कहीं डाउट होता है, बिकॉज देयर मे बी डाइवर्स प्रैक्टिसेस फॉलोड बाय कंपनीज, कोई देता है कोई नहीं देता है, बट इंपॉर्टेंट इज शेड्यूल 3 का फंडामेंटल रिक्वायरमेंट है कि in respect of all items of financial statements previous year figures have to be given. तो आपको वो देना ही पड़ेगा. Insofar as disclosure under 186(4), एक क्वेश्चन है कि disclosure 186(4) में हम क्या दें, तो वहां बोलता है देने, सेक्शन 186 बोलता है the company should disclose in the financial statements full particulars of loans made, loans given, investments made, guarantees given, securities provided, and the purpose for which the loan, security or guarantee is proposed to be utilized by the recipient. Therefore, it follows that कि हमने अगर लोन दिया है, irrespective whether it has been squared up or not, name of the party, loan given during the year, balance outstanding as at 31st March 22, as at 31st March 21, purpose of loan, why I have given the loan, हम वर्किंग कैपिटल के लिए दिए हैं या फिर कॉर्पोरेट फाइनेंस दिए हैं या फिर टर्म लोन दिए, पर्पस ऑफ द लोन आल्सो इज टू बी गिवन.
लेकिन अगेन मोहित मोस्ट ऑफ द बैलेंस शीट्स के अंदर में ये डिस्क्लोजर कहीं नहीं जाता है.
दिस इज अ नॉन कंपाउंडेबल ऑफेंस. अगर आप 186 का डिस्क्लोजर नहीं देते हैं तो अनलाइक 185 व्हिच इज कंपाउंडेबल, 186 इज नॉट कंपाउंडेबल. तो अगर आपने लोन दिया है, लोन्स, इन्वेस्टमेंट, सिक्योरिटीज, गारंटीज, आपको डिटेल देना पड़ेगा irrespective whether they have been squared up during the year. तो therefore से आपने 20 शेयर खरीदा ड्यूरिंग द ईयर, 20 का 20 बेच दिया, ईयर एंड में कुछ नहीं है, आप 186 का डिस्क्लोजर नहीं दे रहे हैं, देन यू आर वायलेटिंग 186.
अच्छा, एक इसमें क्वेश्चन मैं पूछता हूँ इन्वेस्टमेंट को लेकर. तो इन्वेस्टमेंट का शेड्यूल बनता है, इसके अंदर में लोग जो है इन्वेस्टमेंट इन म्यूचुअल फंड्स के अंदर करके रखते हैं बहुत जगह. तो मैंने बहुत से बैलेंस शीट में देखा है कि खाली म्यूचुअल फंड का नाम दे देते हैं, नंबर ऑफ यूनिट सब कुछ लिखा हुआ नहीं रहता है.
म्यूचुअल फंड का डिस्क्लोजर 186 में रिक्वायर्ड नहीं है, बिकॉज इट टॉक्स ऑफ डिस्क्लोजर.
That is not under 186(4), but in the general schedule के हिसाब से under 186, I'm not asking this from the perspective of 186(4), rather from the balance sheet schedule के point of view से, जहाँ पे इन्वेस्टमेंट का हम लोग जो शेड्यूल देते हैं वहाँ पर.
If you see Ind AS में आपको अलाउड है कंसोलिडेट करके देना, बट एज फार एज AS इज कंसर्न, हमारा AS 13 और शेड्यूल 3, आपको अगर 20 म्यूचुअल फंड है, 20 का डिटेल विद फेस वैल्यू, क्वांटिटी, बैलेंस एज ऑन 31st March 22, 21, क्वांटिटी ऑफ द करंट ईयर, लास्ट ईयर, फेस वैल्यू सब देना पड़ेगा
ना. मतलब जैसे 2000 यूनिट है तो 2000 यूनिट ऑफ सच फंड, 2000 यूनिट ऑफ सच फंड.
यस, जैसे हम शेयर्स का डिटेल देते हैं वैसे वैसे सारा म्यूचुअल फंड का भी देना पड़ेगा.
These are the mistakes we generally find in all the 99% of the balances.
Yes, देना ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि आप AS 13 देखो, शेड्यूल 3 देखो, कहीं पे कोई शेड्यूल 3 में कहीं ये बोला नहीं है कि आप उसको कैटेगराइज कर सकते हो, इन्वेस्टमेंट इन शेयर्स एंड सिक्योरिटीज, इन्वेस्टमेंट इन म्यूचुअल फंड्स, कैटेगरी बना के दे सकते हो, बट डिस्क्लोजर ईच एंड एवरी आइटम का देना पड़ेगा, whether it is a current investment or whether it is a long term investment.
अब so far as coming of 186(4) is concerned, अब जैसे इन्वेस्टमेंट कंपनियां शेयरों में इन्वेस्टमेंट दुनिया भर के करते रहते हैं, बेचते रहते हैं, तो each and every देखा जाए तो इट बिकम्स अ वेरी इनॉर्मस टास्क कि सारे एसेट्स वाइज अगर उसको निकाल के दिया जाए तो।
करेक्ट करेक्ट। देखिए यहाँ पे एक तो खाली एक व्यू पॉसिबल है कि 186 will not apply to a company whose principal business is acquisition of
दैट इज
securities.
ओके है, बट बहुत सी कंपनियां तो ऐसी जो 180 प्रिंसिपल बिजनेस नहीं है, एनबीएफसी कंपनीज नहीं है।
नहीं, अगर स्टॉक ब्रोकर है तो जरूरत नहीं है,
हाँ
186 अप्लाई नहीं करता है। देयर आर लॉट ऑफ कंपनीज व्हिच आर मेंशन्ड इन शेड्यूल 7 से इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कंपनीज, रियल एस्टेट कंपनीज, उस पे भी सेक्शन 186 अप्लाई नहीं करता है। अज्यूमिंग आप पे अप्लाई करता है तो क्वांटम इज इमटेरियल, आपको जो देना है देंगे, नहीं देने से कंपनी को भी नॉन कंपाउंडेबल है, ऑडिटर के लिए भी बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, तो देना ही पड़ेगा। Now the last question is there a difference of 0.5% between book stock and stock? Is the small variance? You see what they have talked of, if there is any materiality. अगर वो material difference है irrespective 0.5%, तो that 0.5% also may be material. For example, आपका 100 करोड़ का स्टॉक है, से फॉर एग्जांपल एक पर्टिकुलर मंथ का, एंड आपका बुक स्टॉक 100 करोड़ का है, एंड आपने जो रिपोर्ट किया है वो से 100 करोड़ की जगह 99 करोड़ 50 लाख रुपया का है। तो नाउ आपको ये जज करना पड़ेगा वेदर इट इज मटेरियल और नॉट। अज्यूमिंग इट इज नॉट मटेरियल, ऐसे 250 को देख के आपको जज करना पड़ेगा। बट यस, प्राइमा फेसी a 0.5% डिफरेंस इन वैल्यू ऑफ स्टॉक इज नॉट मटेरियल फ्रॉम एनी पर्सपेक्टिव, क्योंकि हमको यहाँ हमारा बैलेंस शीट का प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी या टर्नओवर का पर्सपेक्टिव से नहीं देखना है, बट मेरे को स्टॉक का पर्सपेक्टिव से देखना है। तो correctly it is not material to the financial statements.
मेरे दो क्वेश्चन और थे मोहित।
हाँ, so
current maturity whether to be shown under secured loan, now it is to be shown under secured loan, under secured loan with security detail देने की जरूरत है क्या नीचे में?
करेक्ट, नो, तो ये हमने उसमें जब प्रेजेंटेशन दिया था तो इस क्वेश्चन को आंसर किया था, बट फिर बोल रहा हूँ कि हमारे को शेड्यूल 3 से बोलता है कि शॉर्ट टर्म बोरिंग्स में यू डिस्क्लोज करंट मैच्योरिटीज ऑफ लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग्स। अब ये कहीं मेरे को बोला नहीं है कि वो वहां पे वेदर इट इज सिक्योर्ड और अनसिक्योर्ड प्लस सिक्योरिटी देना है, बट एक प्रिंसिपल क्वेश्चन अराइज होता है कि जब हम लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग्स दिखाते हैं तो लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग्स में भी सिक्योर्ड और अनसिक्योर्ड है। तो देयरफॉर लेट अस टेक अ केस, हमारा लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग में 10 करोड़ सिक्योर्ड है, 10 करोड़ अनसिक्योर्ड है, उसमें से 1 करोड़ रुपया करंट मैच्योरिटी दोनों का है, शॉर्ट टर्म का लॉन्ग टर्म का दोनों है, सॉरी लॉन्ग टर्म का सिक्योर्ड अनसिक्योर्ड का दोनों है। तो मान लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग्स में सिक्योर्ड दिखाएंगे 9 करोड़ रुपया, उसका सिक्योरिटी दिखाएंगे, फिर लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग्स में अनसिक्योर्ड लोन दिखाएंगे 9 करोड़ रुपया। करंट मैच्योरिटीज में हम टोटल को 2 करोड़ को क्लब कर देंगे, तो क्या यूजर को पता नहीं चलेगा कि ये सिक्योर्ड है कि अनसिक्योर्ड है। नेचर ऑफ सिक्योरिटी दिखाने का जरूरत नहीं है, बट आई थिंक करंट मैच्योरिटीज ऑफ लॉन्ग टर्म बोरिंग सिक्योर्ड और अनसिक्योर्ड को अलग दिखाना चाहिए फॉर अ प्रॉपर प्रेजेंटेशन। ऑल्दो शेड्यूल 3 भी कुछ नहीं बोलता है, गाइडेंस नोट भी कुछ नहीं बोलता है, बट कभी कभी हमको ट्रांजेक्शन का सब्सटेंस को अंडरस्टैंड करना पड़ेगा, और अगर हम दोनों को क्लब कर देते हैं तो यूजर को तो पता नहीं चलेगा ना इसमें सिक्योर्ड कितना अनसिक्योर्ड।
दूसरी चीज मैंने इसमें लिखी है, एक तो ट्रेड डिपॉजिट, जो ट्रेड डिपॉजिट देते हैं एज ए सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट,
या ये भी हम लोगों ने उस समय दिया था कि व्हाट इज सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट। सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट मींस समथिंग व्हिच इज डन इन द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ एन ऑब्लिगेशन। तो हमने सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट दिया है से टू सप्लायर कि माय गुड्स विल मीट दिस स्पेसिफिकेशन, नहीं तो तुम मेरा सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट को इन्वोक कर लो। हमने प्रॉपर्टी रेंट पे लिया, हमने सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट 6 महीने का दिया कि हम एट द एंड ऑफ टर्म उसको जब छोड़ेंगे तो मेरा डिपॉजिट वापस दे देना, कल को कुछ डैमेज होगा तो आप उससे पैसा काट के मेरे को बैलेंस दे देना। या फिर सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिट हमसे कैलकाटा इलेक्ट्रिक को या इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड्स को देते हैं। ट्रेड डिपॉजिट क्या हुआ, दीज आर जनरली नॉट ट्रेड डिपॉजिट्स बोलेंगे, एडवांस। वी हैव टू फाइंड आउट व्हाट इज द नेचर, हम ये क्यों दे रहे हैं। अगर ये मेरा नेचर इस मैंने अभी अपने जो सिचुएशन डिस्कस किए उस सिचुएशन में कवर होता है, then that trade deposit is also not a trade deposit but a security deposit। और ट्रेड डिपॉजिट बेसिकली क्या हो सकता है, जैसे एग्जांपल बोले कि हमने कोई उसको एडवांस दिया फॉर सिक्योरिंग अ मटेरियल और एडवांस दिया फॉर सिक्योरिंग अ सप्लाई, तो दैट इज बेसिकली नॉट अ ट्रेड डिपॉजिट बट अ ट्रेड एडवांस। So you have to find out when you say trade deposit, what is that trade deposit?
मेरे क्वेश्चन और है तो, या एक तो क्वेश्चन है, मैं अगर भरबली पूछ लूं।
हाँ प्लीज प्लीज।
एक जैसे ट्रेड रिसीवेबल ट्रेड पेबल से क्वेश्चन आया मेरे सामने में कि एयरलाइंस कंपनी जो है, और मैं एयरलाइन एजेंट हूं मैं, ठीक है ना, तो एयरलाइंस कंपनी जो है हमारे ऊपर बिल करते हैं विथ देयर चार्जेस, एंड मैं जो है अपने क्लाइंट के ऊपर में बिल पास करता हूं मैं। तो नाउ विथ दिस, जो कॉस्ट ऑफ टिकट है 10,000 रुपए की, उसमें 500 रुपया सर्विस चार्जेस है। एयरलाइंस की मेरे पास में क्रेडिटर आ गए 10,000 के, और मेरे पार्टी के नाम से 10,500 आ गया। तो वेदर दिस 10,000 इज ए ट्रेड पेबल और 10,500 विल बी ट्रीटेड एज ट्रेड रिसीवेबल, और ओनली 500 जो हमारा सर्विस चार्ज है दैट विल बी ट्रेड रिसीवेबल, क्योंकि रेवेन्यू ऑफ ऑपरेशन पे मेरा खाली 500 रुपया जा रहा है, पूरा नहीं जा रहा है।
नहीं, तो अब यहाँ पे ये मैटर क्या है, कई बार इंस्टीट्यूट में भी आता है। फर्स्ट हमको देखना पड़ेगा प्रिंसिपल टू प्रिंसिपल रिलेशनशिप क्या है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आप जब टिकट बुक कराते हो तो आप टिकट बुक करा के अपना एजेंट को पेमेंट करना है, तो इट इज अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बिटवीन यू एंड द टिकट वाला, या इट इज अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बिटवीन और द ट्रेवल एजेंट, और इट इज अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बिटवीन यू एंड द एयरलाइन। इसका रिस्क रिवॉर्ड ऑफ द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कौन बियर करेगा? तो देयरफॉर इफ यू एंटर इनटू अ टिकट बुकिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट विद अ ट्रेवल एजेंट, जिसको आपको 10,500 रुपया देना है, एंड एज्यूमिंग आप 10,500 नहीं देते हैं, तो who will bear the loss of 10,000 and who will bear the loss of 500? It is obviously the travel agent, क्योंकि it is a case of principal to principal contract. Therefore, if it is a case of principal to principal contract, तो उसको भी 10,500 दिखाना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वो रिस्क तो पूरा का ही ले रहा है ना। अगर हम पे नहीं करेंगे तो उसको तो कंपनी को पूरा देना ही पड़ेगा। तो देयरफॉर उसके लिए टोटल, जैसे हम लोग कंसाइनमेंट में बात करते हैं कि हम जब गुड्स कंसाइनमेंट में बेचते हैं, तो आई एज अ कंसाइनी, और हम जब माल बेच रहे हैं तो रिस्क रिवॉर्ड किसका है? माई इंटरेस्ट इज ओनली इन द कमीशन, और माई इंटरेस्ट इज ऑल्सो इन द वैल्यू ऑफ द गुड्स। कि कल को कोई ब्रीच हुआ और डेटर का पैसा रियलाइज नहीं हुआ, तो वो उसका रिस्क रिवॉर्ड वो कौन बियर करेगा, वो लॉस कौन बियर करेगा? तो जैसे हम कंसाइनमेंट में करते हैं वैसे इस टिकट में, तो नॉर्मली एजेंट्स में लॉस लायबिलिटी तो पूरा एजेंट को बियर करना पड़ेगा। तो पूरा एजेंट ट्रेड रिसीवेबल और ट्रेड पेबल, और पूरा टर्नओवर आई थिंक आना पड़ेगा बुक्स में, बिकॉज the travel agent will not be able to absolve the liability by just saying कि देखो भाई, हम तो वो सामने वाला पे नहीं किया तो हम पे नहीं कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि टिकट तो आपने उसके थ्रू बुक कराया, तो वो तो ग्रॉस।
आइटा जो होता है, आइटा तो सीधे अपने एजेंट को पकड़ता है। आइटा डज नॉट रिकॉग्नाइज द कस्टमर, भले वो बाद में बिल उनके ऊपर जाता है, ये बात अलग है जीएसटी पर्पस से लिए, लेकिन आइटा ऑलवेज अपने एजेंट को पकड़ता है।
हाँ, तो therefore principal to principal contract हुआ between the person who has obtained the ticket and the agent. So therefore full amount will come and not the net amount of 500 in the profit and loss account, and full amount will come in trade receivable and trade payable.
एक मेरा लास्ट क्वेश्चन प्रमोटर शेयर होल्डिंग को लेकर, मैंने तुमको भेजा भी था कि लास्ट ईयर में किसी का प्रमोटर शेयर होल्डिंग दिखाया हुआ, नाउ ही इन द करंट ईयर डज नॉट वांट टू रिमेन एज अ प्रमोटर, तो वेदर दिस कैन बी डन?
So उसको भी हम लोग ओपनिंग पार्ट में डिस्कस किए थे। तो therefore general view क्या? Who is a promoter? A promoter is a person who is identified by the management in the prospectus or in the annual return. Number two, who has the control or affairs, who controls the affairs of the company, and third, whether as a shareholder or as a director or otherwise, and third, on whose advice, directions or instructions the board is accustomed to act. Now let us say that you have a company, Pramod Mundra Private Limited. Pramod Mundra is a shareholder holding 80%, and obviously he is a control in the company and he has to be classified as a promoter. Now rest 20% are held by say 20 chartered accountants who may be your friends or relatives, but they do not fulfill the second and third category. They can only be included in the category of promoter if they give you consent to act with you as a promoter or as a joint promoter. Assuming वो consent उनका नहीं है, और वो तीनों category में भी नहीं fulfill कर रहे हैं, then they cannot be included in the category of promoter, because they are not persons who control the affairs of the company, nor are persons on whose advice, directions the board of directors are accustomed to act.
नहीं, अगर लास्ट ईयर हटाया हुआ है और इस साल में अगर उसको हटाया जा सकता है?
Yes, क्यों नहीं हटाया जा सकता है? Not necessarily, हाँ, क्यों, बिल्कुल हटाया जा सकता है।
मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि जो प्रोमोटर एक बार में रह गया दे विल रिमेन प्रमोटर फॉर लाइफ, इट इज
नो
नॉट
नो,
दैट।
नॉट एट ऑल, नॉट एट ऑल। अगर ऐसा होगा, देयरफॉर एक और एग्जांपल, आज एक कंपनी है, उसने तुम्हारे को दो जॉइंट वेंचर में पार्टिसिपेट किया, तो आज दोनों प्रोमोटर है। ये कंपनी किसी और को बेच दिया, तो जो नया आदमी खरीदेगा वो प्रोमोटर हो जाएगा, है ना।
चलो थैंक यू। मैं ये सब क्वेश्चन तुमसे इसलिए पूछ रहा हूँ, दीज आर वेरी प्रैक्टिकल थिंग
Yes,
व्हिच आर जनरली आस्क्ड। तो मैंने बहुत सारी क्वेरी बना रखी थी, तुमको भी मेल किया था।
यस यस,
तो
नो
कुछ
प्रॉब्लम।
एक मेरी भी क्वेरी थी, कुछ एक मतलब उसको ऐड ऑन करके किया हुआ था।
यस यस,
क्योंकि फिक्स एसेट शेड्यूल के अंदर में मैंने देखा कोई भी मेरे पास जितनी भी बैलेंस शीट आई ना, दे ऑल आर मतलब डिफॉल्टिंग ऑन दिस पार्ट, दे आर नॉट गिविंग द लास्ट ईयर्स फिगर।
एक्चुअली ये इंटरप्रिटेशन बहुत लोग का है, बट एफआरआरबी ने ये इंटरप्रिटेशन लिया है कि नहीं, आपको पूरा का पूरा ही देना पड़ेगा।
थैंक यू।
नेक्स्ट वीक का वेलकम। नेक्स्ट वी कम टू द कारो रिपोर्ट, विल टेक फॉर 10 मिनट्स। अगर कोई का क्वेरी है कारो में तो आप डाल दीजिए, तो हम लोग उसको पहले टेकअप कर लेते हैं।
I think, sir, we can complete the topic clause by clause, which you want to, and we can take up the questions in the end for 10 minutes, if you permit, sir, as per your.
Actually, I have to leave by 6:45 latest. और
Okay.
दूसरा, आज थोड़ा गणेश चतुर्थी है ना, तो और दूसरा, this will take itself 2 hours.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, because schedule 3 we took a lot of time, so if anybody has any questions, or we'll take the very finer points. आ जाओ नीचे, आ जाओ। So important is it applies to all companies. It will not apply to small company, very important, and it will also not apply to a private limited company. I think my slide is visible.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
It will also not apply to a private company which fulfills these criteria. Now, what is important is that small companies are separate category. Private limited fulfilling all these 3 categories are separate. तो हम लोग दोनों से confuse नहीं हो जाए। मेरा कंपनी हो सकता है स्मॉल कंपनी नहीं हो, बट ये प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनी का कैटेगरी में आता है, which fulfills all these 3 criteria. I am out of Caro. So you should be happy if you are out of Caro, because now Caro has 42 clauses including sub clauses, and many of the clauses are very difficult to answer. It will apply to section 25. It will not apply to private limited converted to LLP. It will not apply to infrastructure investment trust and real estate investment trust, because these are mutual, because these are trusts. Now, जब हम borrowing calculate करेंगे for the purpose of applicability, both fund based and non fund based are to be considered. If there is an overdraft against fixed deposit, that is also borrowing. Interest accrued and due is borrowing. Accrued but not due is not borrowing, because it is not yet due. Credit card dues is borrowing. अगर हमारा कोई credit card कंपनी को credit card का पैसा देना है, वो 31st March का outstanding है, तो that is borrowing. Now we'll constitute only some important thing. ये सब हम लोगों ने काफी सारा चीज इसमें डिस्कस कर दिया था. Yes, this is very important कि जो discrepancy है in case of inventory, if it is more than 10% or more, this is for each class of inventory. Raw material is a class, finished goods is a class, trading goods is a class, WIP is a class. और अगर कोई क्लास में वैल्यू में 10% से ज्यादा डिफरेंस है, then reporting is required. यहाँ मटीरियलिटी का कोई कंसेप्ट नहीं है, तो देयरफॉर मेरा रॉ मटेरियल 1 लाख रुपया का, फिनिश गुड्स है 10 करोड़ रुपया का, और रॉ मटेरियल 1 लाख है, बुक स्टॉक फिजिकल निकल गया 2 लाख, तो 100% वेरिएशन है. तो ये 1 लाख रुपया वेरिएशन है. इट मे सीम टू बी अ वेरी स्मॉल अमाउंट कंपेयर टू योर बैलेंस शीट साइज, बट यहाँ ये डिस्क्रिपेंसी ऑफ 10% इज रिक्वायर्ड. मटीरियल और इमटीरियल से कोई इसका मतलब नहीं. जो हम लोगों ने देखा था कि मैनेजमेंट को डिस्क्लोज करना है इन केस दे हैव एनी बोरिंग्स from any banks or financial institutions on the basis of security of current assets. वहां कोई लिमिट नहीं था, हमारे को यहाँ लिमिट है 5 करोड़ का. ऑडिटर को खाली 5 करोड़ से ज्यादा का लिमिट अगर लिया हुआ है, irrespective whether it is utilized or not, तो ऑडिटर को इस पे कवर करना है. यहाँ पे एक इंपॉर्टेंट है, when we talk of statutory dues, disputed, undisputed, non-payment of advance tax within the stipulated date of 15 June, September, December, March is also a case of default in payment of tax. तो अगर उसको पे करना था और उसने नहीं पे किया उस समय based on his estimated income, तो that will constitute a dispute, default in payment of tax. Second, अगर हम कभी इंपोर्ट किए हैं गुड्स और हम जब इंपोर्ट किए हैं तो हमको कस्टम्स देना है, कस्टम्स के साथ साथ अगर वहां पे वेयर हाउस में पड़ा है तो हमको रेंट भी देना है, हो सकता है डिलेड पेमेंट के लिए इंटरेस्ट भी देना है। तो उसका जो भी चार्जेस है, इफ आई डू नॉट पे इन टाइम, तो दैट रेंट and that interest also partake the character of a statutory dues, and if there is a delay तो हमको उसको भी रिपोर्ट करना है। थर्ड, अगर हमारा कोई डिस्प्यूटेड ड्यूज है तो व्हाट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि एक इनकम टैक्स का डिमांड था 5 करोड़ का, हम अपील में गए, हमने डिस्प्यूटेड ड्यूज में दिखा दिया, हम वो अपील जीत गए, डिपार्टमेंट ट्राइब्यूनल में चला गया। अगर डिपार्टमेंट ट्राइब्यूनल में चला गया तो देन इट इज आल्सो केस ऑफ डिस्प्यूटेड ड्यूज बिकॉज केस मेरा पेंडिंग है। थर्ड, अगर कोई 5 करोड़ का डिमांड है, हमको अपील में जाना है 30 डेज या ट्राइब्यूनल में जाना है 60 डेज, हम वो 30 डेज के पार करने के बाद अपील में गए, तो देयरफॉर दिस डिस्प्यूटेड ड्यू विल गेट कन्वर्टेड टू इन एन अनडिस्प्यूटेड ड्यूज टिल योर एप्लीकेशन फॉर डिलेड एडमिशन ऑफ अपील इज डिसाइडेड, बिकॉज नाउ द CIT appeal has the power whether or not it will decide the appeal. ये disputed due will partake the characteristic of an undisputed due. This is very important. ये जो हमने आपको लोन गिवन का बोला है, ये लोन टेकन में अब क्या प्रश्न पूछ रहा है, whether there is any default in repayment of loan or borrowings or in payment of interest to any lender. So lender would also include a director, a relative of director, group companies. So unless otherwise I have the terms and conditions reproduced in writing, I will not be able to define. Second, 31st मार्च को इंटरेस्ट डेबिट हुआ, से हम एनुअली करते हैं और इंटरेस्ट का पेमेंट हमने मई और जून में जाके किया, तो देन देयर इज अ डिफॉल्ट, because if interest is supposed to be charged on 31st March, this means it is supposed to be paid on 31st March unless I have a clause that interest हम accumulate करेंगे और उसको 3 साल बाद पेमेंट करेंगे। अगर मैनेजमेंट ये भी बोलता है कि ठीक है हमने डायरेक्टर से लोन लिया है, कोई इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट करने का जरूरत नहीं है, 31st मार्च को इंटरेस्ट चार्ज करो, 3 साल बाद बुलेट रीपेमेंट कर दो और इंटरेस्ट विल ऑल्सो बी एक्यूमुलेटेड, देन इट इज ओके। अगर नहीं है देन 31st मार्च को इंटरेस्ट जो डेबिट हुआ वो 31st मार्च को ड्यू हो गया। अगर वो 15 अप्रैल, 7 अप्रैल, 8 अप्रैल को भी पेमेंट होता है इंटरेस्ट, देन ऑल्सो इट इज अ केस ऑफ डिफॉल्ट, बिकॉज डिफॉल्ट का मतलब है एनी कॉन्ट्रेक्चुअल ड्यू विच इज नॉट पेड विद इन द स्टिपुलेटेड डेट। तो माई स्टिपुलेटेड डेट ऑफ पेमेंट वाज 31st मार्च, अनलेस आई से आई अलाउ यू अ 7 days ग्रेस। बैंक्स में कोई लोन डॉक्यूमेंट में ये टर्म नहीं रहता है, बैंक का डॉक्यूमेंट में क्लियर लिखा रहेगा इंटरेस्ट विल बी चार्ज ऑन मंथली बेसिस, एंड जिस दिन वो डेबिट होगा उसी दिन आपको पेमेंट करना है। अगर आपने नहीं दिया तो दैट वुड कॉन्स्टिट्यूट अ डिफॉल्ट। इंटरनल ऑडिट, इसमें कई बार एक क्वेश्चन आता है, क्वेश्चन है कि whether you have an internal audit system commensurate with the size of the company and nature of its business. तो therefore अब हम कंपनी है जिसपे हमको इंटरनल ऑडिट एप्लीकेबल ही नहीं है, then I can write that I am a class of company to which section 138 does not apply and therefore I am not required to conduct an internal audit. But therefore अगर हम इंटरनल ऑडिट कर रहे हैं और जो मैनेजमेंट स्कोप दिया है, it may be a narrow scope, it may be a wider scope, बट उस स्कोप के हिसाब से ऑडिट हो रहा है एंड एज्यूमिंग आई एम नॉट कवर्ड अंडर 138, तो भी हमको कमेंट करना पड़ेगा कि जो मैनेजमेंट स्कोप दिया है उसके हिसाब से काम हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है। यू मे ऐड दैट 188 138 डज नॉट अप्लाई टू द कंपनी। देयर आर नंबर ऑफ कंपनीज व्हिच आर कैरिंग ऑन एनबीएफआई बिजनेस विदाउट सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ रजिस्ट्रेशन। तो ऐसा है तो हम लोग ये हर साल दे रहे हैं। आई रिएटरेट, अगर फाइनेंशियल एसेट्स और फाइनेंशियल इनकम कंपनी का 50% से ज्यादा है तो इट रिक्वायर्स रजिस्ट्रेशन। प्लीज डू नॉट टेक ओनर्स ऑन यू। मैनेजमेंट में से इट इज अ वन ऑफ इवेंट, हो गया 1 साल हो गया 2 साल हो गया, नहीं होगा, आपका काम है ये रिपोर्ट करना कि इट मीट्स द एसेट, इट वायलेट्स द एसेट एंड इनकम क्राइटेरिया एंड टेक्निकली रिक्वायर्स रजिस्ट्रेशन। लेट द रेगुलेटर डिसाइड whether it is a one-off event or not, because RBI has said, categories said in the press release of 8/4/99 that you will be treated as an NBFC if the financial asset and financial income exceeds 50%. तो रेस्ट आई थिंक हम लोग क्या लास्ट इज इन कारो रिपोर्ट. अभी क्या है, कंसोलिडेटेड फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स में भी कारो एप्लीकेबल है. अब सिर्फ उसमें इतना ही देना है कि अगर स्टैंड अलोन ऑडिटर ने कोई क्लॉज में क्वालिफिकेशन या एडवर्स रिमार्क दिया है स्टैंड अलोन फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट में, तो हम जब सीएफएस बनाएंगे तो हम कारो का जब नोट देंगे तो वहां पे सिर्फ रेलिवेंट कंपनी का नाम और रेलिवेंट कौन सा पैरा ऑफ कारो में किसी स्टैंड अलोन को ऑडिटर ने क्वालिफिकेशन या एडवर्स रिमार्क दिया है, बस इतना ही हमको देना है. इट इज इरेलीवेंट कि वो रिमार्क जो दिया है जिस कंपनी के ऑडिटर ने, वो मेरा कंसोलिडेटेड फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स के लिए मटेरियल है या इमटेरियल है, दैट इज नॉट एट ऑल रेलिवेंट. तो अगर 1000 करोड़ का मेरा सीएफएस है और एक कोई स्टैंड अलोन ऑडिटर जिसका बैलेंस शीट साइज 20 लाख रुपया है, उसने कोई एक कमेंट दे दिया, क्वालिफिकेशन या एडवर्स रिमार्क दे दिया, तो उसको भी मेरे को इस कारो रिपोर्ट में रेफरेंस देना पड़ेगा. सो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट कारो. थैंक यू.
मोहित, एक क्वेश्चन मैं करना चाहता हूँ अगेन शेड्यूल 3 से रेफरेंस के लिए कि जैसे बैंक में जो क्वार्टरली स्टेटमेंट फाइल किया गया उसके लिए हमको ये मांगा जाता है कि इसकी बुक से टैली हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है.
Right.
अब क्या है कि बैंक को जब देते हैं आज के दिन में मैक्सिमम सब कुछ जो ईमेल से दे देते हैं. बैंक जो है बहुत सी जगह जो बैंक वो लोग रिसीव ही नहीं करता है फिजिकल कॉपी. और बैंकर को जो हम लिखते हैं कि भाई आप हमको कंफर्म कीजिए, बैंकर को रिप्लाई नहीं देता है. बिकॉज व्हेन यू आस्क फ्रॉम द बैंक है,
नहीं क्वेश्चन है,
कंफर्म रहता है.
आपको स्टॉक स्टेटमेंट देना था बैंक को, बैंक ने बोला आप ईमेल से दे दीजिए, आपने बैंक को ईमेल से दे दिया, ऑडिटर को ईमेल का एविडेंस और स्टॉक स्टेटमेंट दिखा देगा. अब ऑडिटर को अगर कुछ कंफर्म करना है तो ऑडिटर विल राइट टू दी बैंक कि आपको ये बैंक स्टेटमेंट दिया था, आपको ये स्टॉक बुक स्टेटमेंट दिया, ये वैल्यू लिखा हुआ है, काइंडली कंफर्म बाय साइनिंग अ कॉपी ऑफ द लेटर. जैसे हम लोग लोन
वाले कंफर्म नहीं करते हैं. और दूसरी चीज क्या होती है ना कि आज
मेरा ड्यूटी खत्म.
लेकिन चक्कर ये है कि कंपनी का जो बैंक का जो ईमेल एड्रेस दिया हुआ है, दुनिया भर के इनके स्टाफ के ईमेल एड्रेस दिए रहते हैं, वो लोग कर देते हैं जैसे search@hdfcbank.com. उनके जो सेल्स, उनके जो जिसको क्या बोला अपने जो मैनेजर उनके जो होते हैं.
लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग. मैनेजमेंट ने उसको मेल से भेजा या जैसे भी भेजा, मैनेजमेंट ने भेजा, मैनेजमेंट से आने आपको रिप्रेजेंटेशन लेटर दिया कि हमने ऐसे भेजा है, आपको वेरीफाई करने, आप बैंक को लिखो. अगर बैंक नहीं लिखता है तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं? कैन वी डू एनीथिंग बियॉन्ड दैट? तब
कुछ नहीं कर सकते.
जैसे हम कंफर्मेशन है, हम बैंक को एक बार भेजे, 2 बार भेजे, अब बैंक नहीं रिप्लाई करेगा या कोई डेटर नहीं रिप्लाई करेगा तो हमको उसी को मानना पड़ेगा.
मेल की कॉपी अपने पास रख लेनी चाहिए.
Yes. We have to apply our audit procedures. Yeah. Now, whether financial income and financial assets should both should be considered because twin criteria होगा. अगर खाली financial asset more than 50% है, financial income less than है, then technically it is not an NDS. So with this, I think we can end the session here. Thank you all for a patient hearing.
Thank you so much, sir. Nitesh sir has also joined in.
Excuse me.
When Mohit ji is there is nothing to worry. We don't worry for the delegates. We don't worry for anything. The things will flow automatically. So thank you, Mohit ji, for the wonderful presentation. It is due to your charisma only today. We got 250 plus registration. So I think now the delegates can post their queries, if any, in the chat box so that Mohit ji can.
I think all the questions have already been answered, and I think
yes.
sir has to leave by 6:45 because of the puja. And I think
few of the questions, Mohit ji, you can take, na? Few of the questions.
All the questions we have taken, Nitesh ji.
Okay.
Nitesh ji.
Tibrewal ji wants to ask a question.
Yes,
sir,
please.
I don't want to ask a question. I want to compliment Pramod. He has solved our problem. He has taken up all the questions on our behalf. And Mohit ji is, as usual, very much lucid in his explanation. He has taken up all the pain to answer all the queries. I extend my hearty thanks to both Mohitji and Pramod.
Thank you so much, sir.
So any question, the last question, if any member want to ask, if any, otherwise we can straight away.
Sir, I think we don't have any more questions, sir. Any closing remarks, sir? Any insight or any, advice to all the members?
Sir, if you don't mind on a personal, sir, on a lighter note, आप इतनी चीजें एक साथ कैसे मेंटेन कर लेते हैं, थोड़ा हम प्रैक्टिशनर को भी बताइए सर।
सर वो ऐसा है ना कि आप लोग का इतना प्रेम है ना, तो हम लोग चेष्टा करते हैं कि जब हम लोग आपको डेलिब्रेशन या देने आए तो पॉसिबल आपके जितने क्वेश्चंस है सब आंसर हो जाए, ताकि आप लोग का प्रेम भी बना रहे, आप लोग से आशीर्वाद भी मिलता है।
भगवान ने सबको एक दिन में 24 घंटे ही दिए हैं, लेकिन पता नहीं आप लोग शायद 24 घंटे से 48 घंटा निकाल लेते हैं।
विकास जी, मोहित सर
यही तो मोहित जी का करिश्मा है, यही तो मैं बोला, मोहित जी का करिश्मा है।
फाइनल टॉपर, और ये टॉपर का ही आंसर है, ही इज अ सीए फाइनल टॉपर।
सर टॉपर तो हर 6 महीने में निकलते हैं, ऐसा कोई बात नहीं है।
बट एक ही निकलता है ना। Sir, I don't think so. We have any other question.
So Naveen, we can take the vote of thanks.
Okay, sir. So, being the CA final topper, you have patiently answered all the questions, and we have spent more than 40 minutes on question and answers. On behalf of Views Exchange and all the participating members, I thank you, Mohit sir, for the wonderful discussion and clause by clause analysis on Caro. We can call it a FAQ session on the technical points on Caro. Thank you so much, sir. Also, I would request all the members to join a very interesting topic for tomorrow: tax audit and SEBI settlement scheme. Thank you once again, Mohit sir. Thank you for the wonderful deliberation.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Nitesh ji. Thank you all. Thank you, Saroj ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohit ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, everyone.